It's come 10:30. We'll make a start. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee, 28th November. Have we any apologies? Claire?
Chairman, apologies from Councillors Dick and Dempster, Councillors Hislop and Maitland. And Councillor Maitland.
She'll be in a minute.
Right. There's 14 members at the start of the meeting.
Are there any declarations of interest? Oh, steady on now. Start with Dennis.
Yeah, item 10, Chair.
Councillor Ferguson.
Not so much declaration of interest, but guidance from governance. On item 5, I was actually absent in other council business when the initial hearing, and also therefore not able to go to the site visit. So just confirmation that I'm actually unable to speak or participate in that part of any further proceedings. Is that right? Or?
Chairman, Councillor Ferguson is eligible to speak, despite the fact you weren't at the site visit. You were there back at the meeting on the 12th of July, so you're on my list of those eligible. Oh, sorry, Barnhill. No.
That's confirmation. That's what I wanted. Thanks. And you've actually preempted my second question, was on item 6. I think that's the one you said, yes, I can actually take part. I heard the initial,
yes.
I didn't do the site visit or the subsequent with the...
But you were there from the start and you heard the original representation.
So I'm actually able to participate in that debate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Cochtry. Okay, who was there anyone? Well, Councillor Thompson.
Item 9, having attended some meetings of the parent council at Dumfries High School, I subsequently made some representation to the licensing board regarding the use of a burger van in that area. So I feel in this situation I shouldn't take part in the meeting.
Councillor Yen.
Sorry, exactly same situation with Councillor Thompson. Thank you.
Councillor Geddes.
Item number 5, sir, I wasn't able to make the site visit, but I participated in the earlier discussion, and therefore I regard myself as being fully eligible to participate today.
That's correct, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Blake.
The same with item 5. I was at the meeting with Shambly, so I wouldn't be able to take part. I'd also like clarification on item 6. I don't believe I was at the first meeting, if this is a continuation.
No, you weren't.
And declare an interest in item 7 due to a previous involvement with this.
Tuckfield.
Thank you, Chair. I take guidance on item 5.
Oh, you're not eligible to speak or to vote on that matter.
Thank you. And on item 6, I wasn't able to make the site meeting on that one, but I know the property.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks, Chair. I missed the last 2 planning meetings, so item 5 I wasn't present and I didn't do the site visit. At item 6 I can't remember if I was here in July or not.
It's been a plan at the start. Those members eligible for item 5, Barnhill, are Councillors Nicholl, Mail, Dryborough, Geddes, Gilroy, Macomb, McKee, Maitland and Thompson. For item 6, Anhouse Stranraer, is Councillors Nicholl, Councillors Dick, who is an apology, Councillor Dryborough, Ferguson, Geddes, Gilroy, Yen, Cochtry, Macomb, McKee, Maitland, Thompson.
On item 6, I thought this was a restart of the application, so therefore everyone is eligible to actually discuss that particular planning application.
Mr. Sutty.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the query was raised. There were 2 issues with that one. If you remember, this is actually the 4th time item 6 has come before the committee. There was also a visit. There was a query at the last meeting, twofold. Can we have it as quickly as possible? Ideally before today's meeting. That was looked into, unfortunately, because of the fact that the committee's diary for this year wasn't cleared by council until the 18th of December, and with the run-in period for committees, this was the earliest opportunity we could take it back to you. There was also an issue raised, which, if you recall, Claire was going to seek governance advice on, which we have done, which was whether it could be a restart from scratch. The clear advice we've got from governance is that that would not be appropriate because you're so far down the line with it. You would have a disparity of members having heard different information and some having visited the site, some not. The clearest way is to go forward with those that you've just had the names read out, so it will be continuing. You are bringing it out of session, that was the decision made at last time, so you are going to be able to hear representations, which ideally should be just on the new matters that have arisen since the original meeting in July.
Are there any other declarations of interest? No? Glad to hear that. Huge sigh of relief. Claire.
Chairman, the Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or an area planning manager or other appointed officer will make a short statement addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. For those applications which are in accordance with council policies subject to public speaking, then the order of eligible parties being heard will be as follows: third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application. Then elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee. Such members should withdraw from the committee chamber after making their presentation. And lastly, applicants or their agents. The Chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak in respect of the application to come forward, sit in the reserved seat and make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members, but no questions may be asked of members. When each presentation is completed, people should immediately return to their seats. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application, or if an application is a major development significantly contrary to the development plan or a national development, agree a recommendation to be made to full council, who will determine the application. Decision notice will be issued after a period of 40 hours has passed. The Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have been registered in the period specified in council policy. These individuals have all had their registration to speak confirmed and no other persons will be allowed to speak. Representatives have been placed in alphabetical order. A copy of the public speaking list is available from the committee officer taking notes of our proceedings. Representations on planning applications must be made on the basis of valid planning matters only. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, excepting for national and major developments, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. This should allow sufficient time for interested parties to make relevant points. The Chairman will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long and has a stopwatch to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I would also like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and that the recording will subsequently be available for public listening. Item 3 on the agenda is the minute of the meeting of the 28th of November 2012. Is that a true record? Agreed. Thank you. Item 4 is the minute of the meeting of the 12th of December. Is that a true record of the meeting? Agreed. Thank you. We move on to item 5, which is erection of 45 number dwelling houses formation of access roads and parking areas, children's play areas, suds detention basin and landscaping works at plots 1 to 45, Phase 3, Barnhill, local plan site LN 10B on land adjacent to Oakfield, Glencairn, Woodside, Terregles Road, Dumfries. Claire Eckstein, please.
Thank you, Chair. As it's now in session, I'll just put up the layout plan of the site. And answer any questions if members have.
Yeah, it was deferred from the last meeting to Councillor McKee.
Just a question before I start, Chair. Have we had any word, was it Scottish Water, we were hoping to come to the site visit regarding the operation of the suds within that scheme?
I spoke to Mr. Stephen Smith, who's the development manager at Scottish Water. He had expressed his apologies due to other diary commitments that he was unable to make the site visit. But he's the contact within Scottish Water regarding that query. I didn't ask for any comment because obviously it was he was to attend the site meeting.
Councillor Maitland.
Well, clearly, when we all went on the site visit, it was perfectly obvious that the major issue is drainage. And I have to ask the planners about the issue of drainage. The place is wet, and I just want to know what our locus is in respect of, we've allocated the area for housing. It is quite clearly denominated as housing area, designated as that. So eventually it was quite obvious there was going to be housing planned for it. But nevertheless, have we got to look at the area with respect to drainage? So what is our locus with that issue?
Councillor, when an application is received, the proposals include the details for how they're going to drain the site. And as part of the submission and part of the assessment, which has gone through in the report, that has been carried out. So in that context, our recommendation is one of approval because we've gone through the proper process, consulted all the people who are advisors in respect of drainage, and they're satisfied that there's no grounds for objection on the basis of what has been submitted.
Councillor McKee.
With all due respect, I think what Councillor Maitland has raised is exactly what I was going to raise as well. Luckily, we had our Wellingtons with us. The site was absolutely soaking. I don't know when it last rained, but there was pools of water lying on that piece of land. Now, I don't know about other members of this committee, but we've had emails from residents in Barnhill, and they've raised the issue with the developer about the state of their gardens. Their gardens are so wet they can't use them. And I think we need to look at what is our responsibility with regards to that. And are we talking here about a piece of land that will never be really fit for building use? And it's got to cause us concerns. I've got other issues I'd like to raise as well with regard to if you're going to start off at the design and layout on page 37, 4.6, you talk about this could be viewed as a rounding off of the existing estate. But when I'm finished, I would like to move that the rounding off is done as is and this existing site is not used. The proposed layout reflects a transitional approach, not adopting the key principles of designing streets, particularly as no wider master plan was drawn up. Now, does that indicates to me that this piece of land has been added on, and really the master plan would have been done, I would have thought, when Barnhill Estate started. And this would look as if a piece of land here, right, we might as well just fill that in with houses. And I'm not entirely happy with that. And the connections of the site into adjoining areas is also restricted. And although there's a footpath proposed in the northwest corner, the access to this site is going to be through the existing development, and when you're actually travelling around the streets, you're travelling about a mile before you get to this site. And I don't think that's acceptable. As has been mentioned before, you're talking about 45 houses, two cars per house, that's 90 cars going to be journeying in and out that at least twice a day. The garden ground, the garden ground associated with the proposed dwelling houses is the minimum. Therefore, it would be reasonable in the interests of residential amenity to control future development by removing the permitted development rights for future extensions. Now, that means that anybody purchasing this house would not be able to put an extension on, or a sun lounge or anything like that. And I don't think that we should be accepting that at this present time. You're talking about 3, 4 and 5 apartment houses, which are obviously are going to be big families in the main. And well, the houses that are being built prior to this, I think the first thing folk done was put an extension on. So I don't think it's right that we should be restricting permitted developments. And if we go to recommendation 18, the discharge of surface water to the environment from a development, I think we've got to look at, is there something that can be done regarding drainage for the site where it's affected at the present moment? So I'll wait to hear other people, but certainly I would be intended to move against this recommendation.
Councillor McComb, do you wish, was there any answers? Do you want to say anything, Janice?
I have got a few, I'm jotting down them as fast as I can. The one thing which I would draw attention to, in relation to existing problems of the adjacent site, that can't form part of the consideration of this application. That's something I must draw attention to. In relation to the master plan, I've had a quick word with Claire. The history of this site is a long-standing one, and the requirement to have a master plan has changed over that period. So when it was originally developed, no master plan was produced for the overall site to include this, but we didn't ask for one for the actual site at that time in any event. So in that context, that's why there isn't a master plan. So I think that covers the sort of bits which I'd like to raise in relation to specific, but if I hear everybody else, then I can come back as one. Thank you.
Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Chair. I would reiterate the concerns about drainage. This land sits about maybe 2 metres below the existing housing development. On page 38, it states here that the suds detention basin is in the northeast of the site. Now, the map, to my eye, shows it in the northwest. It is the northwest. The reason I say so, the northeast would actually have made more sense, because that's where the standing water was, which indicated that there is a flow of water to that corner of the site. So I have very real concerns about drainage. The site has a very, very slight slope on it. The outflow ditch, there is little or no movement of water in the ditch whatsoever. The ground was extremely soft. It is lower than the land on the existing housing development. Also, there is the issue of traffic. I understand there's an allocation of 2 parking spaces per house. Now, most households nowadays, the younger members of the household have cars as well. That I would fear that the 2 car per household allocation is inadequate. The access roads also are fairly narrow and heavily used, and I would have concerns about putting additional traffic on the existing access. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. The point I wanted to raise is on page 31 of 176, where including wastewater treatment works currently has a capacity to serve this proposed development, and that's stated by Scottish Water. But on page 32, Scottish Environment Protection Agency advises that there may be problems with premature operation of overflows at including sewage treatment works. And for this reason, it may be advisable taking the foul drainage from this development proposal to Trequeer sewage works. I just wonder why there is conflicting information on that.
Thank you, Councillor. I can't answer for the reason why there's conflicting information, but when we receive an application, we have to consult these two bodies, and whether or not they speak to each other is not something that we can actually control. The Scottish Water would be the people who would be actually receiving it, and if they're satisfied that they can accept it, they haven't raised an objection that no connection will be granted, we have to go with that recommendation. They have not objected to the proposal on the grounds that no connection can be made. Now, coming to the point in relation to the Scottish Environment Protection Agency, they've obviously have concerns which they would then take up with Scottish Water were an application to be made. So again, it's something that is between them and Scottish Water rather than with the planning authority. But neither have actually said that the development should be refused on the grounds that it can't be properly drained. So in that context, in relation to those two, I accept there is a conflict, but they haven't said to us that that conflict is such that it is one which requires us to recommend refusal on the grounds that the site can't be drained. Is that? Thank you. Could I also add one further point in relation back to Councillor McKee? In relation to the aspect to do with extensions, it doesn't mean that they won't be successful in getting permission for a conservatory. All it means that an application has to be made to us to establish whether or not it is properly sited so there's no overlooking issues. And as part of the application process for citing one, we could put in measures to ensure that there wouldn't be overlooking. So it's not that it would be automatically refused if the application were to be made.
I think my point was not so much the overlooking as having space to actually put the extension on.
Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Chair. And I've listened to what Councillor McKee and McComb and Maitland have said, and I agree with a lot of what's actually been said, and in particular the road safety issues and the issues with regard water issues such as flooding and drainage, and now, of course, Councillor Thompson's talked about sewerage issues and the different advice that we're being given off SEPA and Scottish Water. To that end, I think it was a good idea to actually go and have a look at the site and get your feet on the ground, so to say, or as the case may be, under the ground because it was that wet. And in that particular case, Chair, I'm going to propose that we actually refuse this application because it's contrary to General Policy 7 and General Policy 8, which is 7, of course, is site and design, and 8 is overdevelopment of the sites because of those two particular cases, the road safety issues and the water issues in that particular area.
Councillor McKee.
I'm quite happy to second that, but I'm wondering, would it be feasible or would it be an idea to put in the wet land, the state of the land, that we don't think the land is suitable for development on the grounds of it being wet land anyway, along with the points.
Thinking about that one, you've obviously got a site which is identified in your development plan as being, in principle, suitable for development. They've submitted a SUD scheme. You would have to be quite satisfied that, from the information you've got and from having visited the site, that the site was incapable of being developed and surface water being adequately addressed. It's the surface water we're talking about here. It's not the actual foul drainage or anything like that. If from your site visit you are concerned about it, I would suggest you couch it in slightly more cautious terms and say that it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated to the council that the land, given its water content, is capable of being developed. So you're just saying it hasn't been demonstrated. Clearly they have, in the plan in front of you, they've got a suds pond which indicates that positive measures could be taken to drain the site. But if you're still not satisfied, I think phrasing it that way would be a better way of actually meaning that you're not saying it cannot be, because I think where there's a will and where there's money, there's way.
I'd be quite happy to go with that, Chair. Councillor
I think there is a potential to, if you've got a good system in place to actually drain that particular site. But it has been, certainly on circumstantial evidence that we've seen, the flooding in back gardens from adjacent site hasn't been addressed properly. And that would be my concern, that this would not be addressed properly. And that's what the reasons why I'm talking about the policies.
Okay, we have a motion to refuse this application. Is anyone otherwise minded? Councillor Maitland.
No, forgive me, I'm not otherwise minded, but I do think that there is actually an issue to raise here about the density of this. Councillor Dryburgh is, I think, completely correct. I think there is an issue of density, particularly taken into account the access. I mean, you know, we wound into it for a long way, and then you're going to wind even further into this, in essence, cul-de-sac. And I think I would like to say to planners that actually I do think there's an issue, particularly because of the length of access. A long, long way in, and then you've got a lot of houses crammed together at the end. And so I'm entirely with Councillor Dryburgh. Actually, I don't think it would stand up on drainage. That's why I asked the question. I don't think we can reject this on grounds of drainage, but I think there is an issue of density. I do think so. And ease of access. The Chief Constable mentions the issue about car parking. Now, he's concerned about emergency access, but just in terms of amenity and living, I think that we would have a problem eventually with this.
Just for clarity in the issue of density, the council does not actually have a policy in its development plan setting out a minimum density. So there will be tensions if that is the reason for refusal, because you don't have a development plan and policy to fall back on. The only policy which I'm aware of dates back to 1981, which the author was a certain Mr. Monroe. It is still policy. It is not enshrined in the development plan, and that's to do with window-to-window distances, where basically we have two opposing rear windows, or front for that matter. They shouldn't be closer than 18 metres. So by halving 18 metres, you get a minimum depth normally of 9 metres. Now, as I understand it, when you set a minimum standard, that almost invariably becomes the industry standard. You have a minimum of 2 car parking spaces. That's the road's requirement. So it actually ticks all the boxes down to the minimum standard. Now, you obviously have concerns about the density, but as officers, it maybe comes back to this age-old issue again, but is it good enough to approve or is it bad enough to refuse? It does tick the relevant boxes in terms of the council standards for window-to-window distance and car parking. So that's why I'm urging some caution in this, because obviously if it goes to appeal, you're going to have to be fairly certain of grounds to actually defend the decision here, and you don't have any development plan policies you can fall back on by saying it's contrary to the development plan.
Councillor Geddes.
Looking for some advice, if I may, sir. Let me say that I have no problems whatsoever with the terms of the motion. I think that the advice that's been given by Mr. Sutty as always is sound advice, but my concern from my personal perspective is that the motion, if I understood Mr. Sutty's advice correctly, would incorporate the words that following upon the site visit, it has not been demonstrated. Now, I was not on the site visit. I support essentially what's being said. I will not, under any circumstances, wish my dissent to be recorded because I am not dissenting. So I think perhaps I don't want to leave any possibility of it being argued that me participating in that decision renders the decision somehow or another unsafe. So what I will do, sir, with your leave, is I will absent myself from the meeting, as I say, when the decision is being taken. That's what I'm minded to do so.
Yes, sorry, I'm thinking on my feet as ever. When I said that, really that was trying to put into terminology what I'd heard from Councillor Drybrough. In coming to that, what I was saying was that as members who had visited the site, you had experienced that. I wouldn't put that as a grounds for refusal. Just to be clear, you would be saying something along the lines, my interpretation of what you're saying, is that it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated currently that the site is capable of being adequately drained in terms of surface water. That is the only wording I would suggest for that.
Councillor Geddes.
In other words, sir, I can stay, and I am supportive of the comments that have been expressed. Thank you.
Okay. Claire, could you read out the motion?
Chairman, it's a unanimous decision. There's no amendment, but the decision is to refuse the application on the grounds General Policies 7 and 8, and it's not been satisfactorily demonstrated at this time that the land is capable of being drained of water. Yeah, surface water.
Happy with that, Councillor? Is that okay? Okay. So the decision is to refuse.
Therefore, the decision is to refuse this application.
Thank you. We now move on to item 6. Yeah.
Just check we've got everything back.
Okay, Claire, could you read out who is actually eligible so we make sure we get the right people here?
Certainly, Chairman. It's yourself, Councillors Dryborough, Ferguson, Geddes, Gilroy, Yen, McCottrey, McComb, McKee, Maitland and Thompson.
Councillor McCottrey's not. Right, okay. We'll wait till you coming back, Councillor McKee.
Chair. To sort of go through this every time, is it not possible in these recalls that actually the councillors who are eligible to sit are actually named in the papers? I mean, a lot easier, we all know right at the start.
No problem.
Okay, I think we're all back now. It's a deferred item. Mr. Barker, have you anything to add to report? Okay, we'll hear the representations, and we have one speaker, Mr. Sloan. You can follow Mr. Sloan and speak, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Members of the board.
3 minutes, Mr. Sloan.
Right, I'll be less than that this time, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. If I may, I would like to address one or two of the issues which have arisen during the recent debates around the proposal, which I hope will address some of the concerns of the committee Firstly, with regards to the attempts to find a party willing to undertake the restoration of the building, Anne House has been on the market for well over 2 years, with the asking price having been reduced significantly in that time. It has been advertised both locally, nationally. Neither my estate agent or myself have had any written or detailed offers. Some verbal offers have been made, as the planning department are aware of through their investigations, but no firm interest or written offer has resulted. Despite the publicity surrounding this application, there has been no serious interested parties forthcoming, and I feel it is fair to say that in the light of the reports which we commissioned and submitted giving detailed costs of restoration, there has just been no genuine interest either locally, nationally, or indeed anyone with the necessary financial backing. Finally, Chairman, some members may be aware of the developments that my company has undertaken in Stranraer District, Hampton Court, Keyhead View. We did a large housing scheme at Laswalt, just to name but a few, just trying to demonstrate our commitment to the area. I want to go on record and state that Esney Homes, we are not a bulldozer-ready company. We are a reputable local firm who are responsible for 20 employees. Even if our application is successful today, I can promise all members that we are more than willing to work with and still exhaust every avenue to find any individual, consortium or developer prepared to move Anne House forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time today. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. Any questions for Mr. Sloan? Councillor Thompson.
Mr. Sloan, at the sort of original application before this committee, a stay of, if you like, execution was granted so that developers or interested parties could come forward. Can you tell me why then the property was actually taken off the market in August 2012?
We took it off the market then. We kept it on. We imagined that the original application would take 3 months. We took it off primarily because we thought, hopefully, if we get a decision, because as you know, taking it off the market, there's still fees incurred with the advertisement agencies. And that's the reason why we did purely cost.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councillor McComb. Any other questions for Mr. Sloan? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Maitland.
I just want to be completely clear. Is Mr. Sloan saying he has had no offer for this property?
There has been verbal offers only. We have no written either in legal format or any other format.
Thank you. You've had an offer. Thank you.
Councillor Yen.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask the applicant that I try to remember what's happened in July meeting and on the meeting of 29th of August as well. As far as I remember, I don't hear any report from you or council officers regarding any offers from any parties for this particular property. But in our report today, it says you had 5 bids received between April 2012 and September 2012 from 3 parties. But why do we not have any indications previously? Thank you.
Yeah, Chairman. There was no written offer ever put in. It was all verbal. It never came to anything. And that was it.
Councillor Geddes.
Well, I think the point I would make, sir, and I don't want to get involved in semantics, but I think it's well known, well accepted that an offer for the purchase of heritable property in Scotland requires to be in writing. And from what Mr. Sloan is saying, there technically, in my view, there never has been an offer. There may have been expressions of interest, but it's the old cliche, of course, that a verbal offer, to purchase property in Scots law is no worth the paper it's written on. And I think that's got to be borne in mind. My take would be, standing the information that Mr. Sloan has imparted, is that there may have been expressions of interest, but there has been no offer since there has been nothing committed to writing.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, I checked with my estate agent, just on the point the councillor made, to make sure there was no written or legal offer put in, and that was up until yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Sloan? Councillor Maitland.
Just in terms of the question of shifting it, I presume, though, would it be the case that you've been marketing it continuously? What is the latest price that you've been willing to accept?
I don't know if that's...
Okay.
What are you thinking of offering? I don't think that's a planning concern, Councillor Maitland. Yeah. You can take your seat, sir. You're in session, ladies and gentlemen. Councillor McKee.
Can I just raise a point? It's the Council Conservation Officer, it's page 50, right at the top of the page. He says she says the building is not beyond repair. More options regarding future ownership ought to be considered, such as Scottish Historic Buildings Trust. Now, I would assume that they know what is happening to these buildings. Now, is there no, to a certain extent, an onus on the Council Conservation Officer to contact these people at the Historic Buildings Trust to see if they're interested? They could, this has been going on since July last year, and if this is another red herring, well, they've had plenty of time to raise it with these people. And the developer must be getting to the end of his tether with the carry on we're having here. To keep raising things like this is a bit of nonsense, with all due respect.
Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I think the best reference is to refer to paragraph 4.17 on page 55, which elaborates on those comments. We conclude that paragraph by saying this option has not been demonstrably explored. So we've really put the onus on the applicant in this case to, we've spelt out what we feel is required, and the onus has been put on them to explore that option and any other options open to them, which would, involve retaining the building in some form.
Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I remember this one because myself and Councillor McCottery and Councillor Thompson did pay a site visit to it was a lovely day that day. We actually went to the Clyde Hole. It was lovely. Yeah, it was lovely. And I remember at that time the discussions that we had about, cost of potential renovation, potential upkeep, that type of thing. And then coming back to the following planning meeting, if you remember, there was two sort of motions, a motion and an amendment, and one of the motions was to give 3 months for interested parties. That's went beyond the 3 months now. It's actual fact that it's coming to nearly 4 or 5 months. And I've got real concerns. If this keeps on going, we could be here to doomsday. We want to move this on as we do want to move Stranraer on, and the waterfront project and all that type of thing is all there. So I want to go back to my original motion, which was to agree to the demolition of this building and put that forward. I think it goes forward to another party before it's accepted. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the one good day of 2012. I would agree with you on that one. Any other comments? Councillor Thompson.
Well, I hear what Councillor Driver has to say on this. I don't think it would be a safe decision to actually recommend this property for demolition. Historic Scotland have said that this building is of special interest, and we are actually bound by that, as the Council Conservation Officer has supported it. I understand the developer's anxiety, to do something with the site. And I think previous comments have decided, have described the building as somewhat of a relic. And I would probably support that, but I don't think it would be a safe decision. And I would certainly move an amendment to the motion made by Councillor Dryburgh.
Councillor Maitland.
Yes, I understand exactly where Councillor Thompson is coming from in regard to the safety of any such decision. I think members are quite often anxious about making something tidy. And I would say to members that it is perfectly possible to renovate such a building. My sister-in-law's latest dwelling had a tree growing through the middle of it and a foot of sheep dung in it. So it is perfectly possible to renovate buildings which seem to be beyond repair to most people who wouldn't take on such a project. But there are people willing to do such a thing. And I say to the committee here that 4.6 indicates quite clearly that consent for demolition of a listed building is only granted in exceptional circumstances. And there is a strong presumption against the demolition of any listed building. I think at this point, unfortunately, what we have got is that if we do not make it clear to landlords and owners who take on property in cases like this, that we do value the built environment, we do value historic properties, we do see that there is an opportunity here, we will be laying ourselves open to simply accepting that when a building falls into disrepair, it can be swept away. And that is a terrible mistake to make. I think it's really important that actually the opportunity for somebody to come along at a proper market price relating to the state of the property at the moment, not to what it could possibly be, which is what is going on at the moment, until we send a clear message that we are not prepared to demolish a listed building in this manner, we will continue to make ourselves, I think, hostages to fortune. So I second Councillor Thompson's amendment.
Councillor McCaughtrey.
I would support Councillor Dryburgh. I mean, having gone there on the site visit, you can see from the photograph it's not a thing of great beauty in any case. It may well be Georgian. There's no depth to it. It's only one room deep. It looks an impressive building, but it's not that impressive once you've wandered around all around about it. And in many years I've been to Stranraer, that was the first time I was ever aware that building was there. I mean, I can remember when the council sold the former library to Safeway at the time, 20 odd years ago. I was down there quite a lot, and I never even realised that building was there. So it's been lying derelict for donkey's years, obviously no great interest in it. Totally surrounded by modern day buildings nowadays anyway. I think the interesting thing was those of us who had the opportunity to go on the site visit saw inside it. There's absolutely nothing inside of any architectural or historical interest whatsoever. It's all been stripped out back in the 1950s. It's all got 1950s tiled fireplaces. There's no cornicing left in the building. There's no ceiling roses in the ceilings as you expect to find. So it's by no means as historic as it's being made out. I noticed there's a number of objections there. Not one of the objectors actually resides in Stranraer. I think the nearest one's about 7 or 8 miles away. There's some as far away as the South England, which it just shows you the folk in Stranraer have no great love of that building. They probably welcome it being converted into something else. And I think, to be fair to some of the objectors, they're the usual suspects who object to everything of that kind. So I don't really take their objections all that seriously, quite frankly. So I'm quite happy to support Councillor Dryburgh.
Councillor Yen.
May I say, Councillor McCaughtrey, that objector doesn't matter where they live. They still are eligible to put their objections in. Thank you.
Any other comments to make? Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Chair. The house you see in front of you is a Georgian building. Once that building is demolished, it is gone forever. However, it has been sitting in limbo for several years. How long do buildings like that require to sit in limbo before development takes place. It really is a quandary you're in. Many people have wrung their hands over it, but no one has come forward with a solid offer to do something with it.
Councillor Gilroy.
Well, that just actually leads on to something I was going to want reassurance from the planning officers that should we agree the recommendations, that we will go forward with a repairs notice. And it's not in the recommendation, but there's no point in doing the recommendation if we don't follow it up with some kind of action to so I'd almost like that in the recommendation.
Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. We've referenced this in 4.21 of the report. To serve that notice would be a matter delegated to myself, so it would not need committee approval for that, which is the reason it doesn't form part of the recommendation. But we would certainly, it depends what decision members take today, but if you're minded to accord the recommendation, we would take a note and take the appropriate action to the effect of 4.21 in the report.
Well, sorry, just to come back to that, I do just think it would be part, I would like to see it as part of the recommendation that there was a notice. If I'm being honest. I'm sure you'll do it, Mr. Duncan, but I just think it gives it more strength.
It wouldn't form part of the actual decision on the application, but you could put quite legitimately a point underneath that you would defer the matter to the area planning manager to take the action as mentioned in paragraph 4.21. That would be quite competent.
Well, that would be up to my colleagues who are doing the amendment, but hope that will do that.
Councillor Geddes.
Can we see the slides, sir, which show the location of the property in its wider context? Because while I accept entirely that it's in a mixed-use area, I think some of us would argue, in fact, that the building's wider setting was compromised and almost fatally compromised at the time that the adjoining supermarket development, for instance, was granted, presumably on the basis of public benefit and public good. And that would be helpful as far as I'm concerned. That's a rather quick canter through, if I may say so, sir. It would have been helpful to have had indications, as it were, of where the Northwest Castle is, where the supermarket car park is, etc., etc.
Right, I'll just start at the beginning again, if that's okay with members. Right. This is the entrance to the site from Bella Vista Road. Just get a fleeting glance of the building there, just sort of peeking under the sailboard. The front elevation, which you've been looking at. The rear elevation from the south looking north, that's over one of the tail ends of Morrison's supermarket car park adjacent. The square white box peeking in the right-hand corner of the picture, halfway up the right-hand margin, is the annex to the Northwest Castle Hotel. This is one of the street elevations off Bella Vista Road, which is a side elevation, and that gate is directly on the back of pavement edge. This is within the site, showing the grounds, the annex buildings to the property. This shows part of the gardens, which have since been thinned out a bit since the photograph was taken. So the vegetation has been cut down now, and it's the openness or the availability or size of the plot is now more apparent. This shows the difference in levels between the actual garden area just outside the front of the house and the car park to the Northwest Castle Hotel adjacent. So you get this quite awkward juxtaposition in sort of curtilages and levels, which Councillor Geddes was inferring there. This is a view from the garden through a sort of a window in the boundary vegetation, looking towards the Northwest Castle annex and the hotel itself, and also the curling rink just to the right of this square box structure, and the building just to the right, beyond the sort of more warehousey roof thing, is the office section to the Morrison supermarket, the 1-2-story part of the building. Just a slightly different slant on the last view there.
And this was an indicative plan that was submitted with the application, showing the type of replacement unit that could go on the site should the current application be allowed, the building demolished, and should an application for subsequent redevelopment take place, this would be the sort of thing that they would have in mind. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Geddes.
Can I come back on that? So, I mean, the one fact of the matter is that, you know, it would take an enormous, in my view, it would take a very, well, the report mentions it, an extremely significant amount of money, as it were, you know, to redevelop this property. And at the end of the day, if in fact we don't grant, we adopt the recommendation here today to refuse consent to demolish, and indeed sell a repairs notice on the proprietors, that will keep the subjects essentially wind and watertight. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's not to say that the subjects, you know, by the very passage of time, will continue to, I think moulder might be the term that some of us would use in that regard. And, you know, I would dearly like to have seen, as it were, some form of meaningful alternative use being brought forward. We talked in the report at the end of the day about, you know, the possibility of a buildings preservation trust. Well, I'm not entirely sure if I agree with Mr. Duncan, you know, saying in fact that the onus to develop that was necessarily with the applicant. I think, you know, I am profoundly disappointed that, you know, in the passage of time that nothing has come forward in relation to exploring this possibility. And I would have thought that perhaps it might have been at the behest of some of the people who were expressing concern about the dangers implicit in demolishing the building. I'll say no more than that at this stage.
Okay. Councillor Maitland.
Councillor Geddes kindly got the slides up, and actual fact, interestingly, thinking about the previous application, the window-to-window distance is really very good. I have to say that the issue of the back of it being compromised is indeed correct. But, you know, there are a lot of buildings. I just spent the weekend in London, and there are an enormous number of buildings with very considerably less curtilage, handsome Georgian buildings in London with very considerably less curtilage and closer window-to-window distances. I draw members' attention to 1.8, which is talking about an email confirmation from a purchaser outlining a verbal cash offer. And all I would say to members is that you haven't really tested this through, and I don't think you can safely send this off to be swept away without testing it properly.
Okay, we have a motion, we have an amendment. No one else has anything to add to the debate. We will go to the vote. David?
I was going to say, Chair, could I hear the exact wording that I think it was Councillor Driver put it forward for justifying the demolition? Because I heard it, that you wanted to see that, but I didn't actually hear the justification.
Councillor Driver?
The motion was as it was in the one that I sent in August, I think it was August or September, in that we allow the demolition of this building because it will work in compliance with the rest of the area of that particular area, and allow future development for use within the Stranraer regeneration project.
Going well till you added the words to that effect, but Councillor Gilroy?
Well, is that a competent planning reason?
Well, I would have concerns about that because this is basically the demolition of a listed building, and we have no proposals for what's going in its place. If you had an application for its demolition and a firm planning application for something that's going in its place, then I think that's a reasonable justification. I would suggest that really if you're putting forward a motion here to actually require the demolition of the building, it more has to be based around the actual justification for the building going, that it is, you know, it's no longer of any historic or architectural value. It's those sort of grounds, the only grounds for demolition, in the absence of a firm proposal for something going in its place.
Councillor Driver? 5 minutes? Okay, adjourn for 5 minutes.
In 2.1 from Historic Scotland's objection, they're saying it's a good example of late 18th century classical house with a degree of formality unusual in Stranraer. Right? Are there other, that would suggest to me it's not the only 18th century classical house in Stranraer. Yeah. And so what would actually make it have special interest? What is the specific conditions of the listing?
Robert or Peter, one of you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the listed building schedule off by heart for Stranraer. In fact, I profess not to know it very well, but certainly from my acquaintance of Stranraer over the time I've been here, there's not that many such buildings around. You know, they're certainly not obvious. I mean, really, the reason that this one's been caught by the listing is primarily its age, and by virtue of its age, you know, its architecture and the style which we now see it in. So really, that's why it's listed.
Thank you for that clarification. I think the question has to be is we can't, without preempt which way I'm going to vote here, I don't think we can actually preempt not demolishing houses because they're old, and because there's a listing, because if that was the case, we would have no development or redevelopment anywhere, because we'd have to keep all the houses or all the existing buildings for time immemorial. In fact, this building here wouldn't have been built if that had been the case. So thanks for the clarification. Yeah.
Councillor Geddes.
It was merely to remark that the case officer's phraseology was interesting, caught by the listing. I won't rehearse Mr. Ferguson's comments and my colleagues' comments.
Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks, Chair. And just to clarify on the motion, I've just looked at thanks to the clerk, I've managed to get a copy of the 29th of August minutes, and the motion was by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by myself, to approve the application as it been satisfied to demonstrate the proposal complies with demolition guidance provided in the report. That was that at that particular time. However, that went to a vote and it was beaten by the counter amendment by Councillor McKee and Councillor Geddes. So there was in the original minutes, which we have now agreed, information on the demolition guidance. However, just to clarify the motion itself, that we agree demolition because the building has no longer any architectural value, it's fallen into such disrepair that the quality and integrity of the building itself and the cost of refurbishment is sufficient to agree the demolition.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm grateful for that clarification. This is really cross-referencing what you have on page 53, which is quoting from the it's called the SHEP, the Scottish Historic Environment Policy. You'll see in the middle of the page there's paragraph 3.50, and that gives the indications of instances when the planning authority should be satisfied that A, the building is not of special interest, B, the building is incapable of repairs, right? C, demolition of the building is essential in delivering significant benefits to economic growth or to the wider community, or D, repair of the building is not economically viable and it's been marketed at a price reflecting location, condition, etc. So that was what made the motion previously competent, that you were cross-referencing those. I was just concerned when you're making mention of it was going to free it up for economic development, when obviously there was no proposal and you do stand the risk of getting a gap site left.
Thank you, Chair. And of course, as council, we have to look at the wider side of things, and since that's certainly just one house.
Councillor Geddes.
Can I say, sir, I hope it's helpful to members as well. My recollection is, one of the parties that was involved in the counter amendment was in fact essentially to defer consideration to give the opportunity, as it were, for a period of 3 months, if memory serves me correctly, to look at the possibility of developing or bringing forward such as a buildings preservation trust, etc., to address the issue. This has never materialised, and therefore I am quite clear now in my own mind as to just exactly the way that I will be going. Grateful to you, sir. Grateful particularly for allowing the adjournment and the assistance that we've had from officers serving this committee. Thank you.
Try to oblige. Councillor McCaughey.
Yeah, happy to support Councillor Driver. And I would remind members that if you go to 1.2 in the report, it does tell you, apart from in category B, very little historical or documentary evidence about the house survives, although it once stood apart from the town of Stranraer. And I think if that was still the case, if it stood apart from the town of Stranraer, you'd probably accept it has got, it's something that can be seen by people and appreciated for what it is. The fact is, nowadays, the only way that you can appreciate, if you want to call it that, the architecture, is actually within the policies of the building. You cannot see it from all its splendour from the car park. You can't see it in any context unless you're actually within the grounds. So it's only of interest to whoever's there at the moment. I'll also remind those members who are on the site visit that there's absolutely nothing inside the house at all of historical context, apart from some 1950s fireplaces. That's your whack. There's nothing else in that building of any historical interest whatsoever. So I think in this particular instance, demolition is the best option, and let something else go in its place.
I think, Councillor McCaughey, if my memory serves me correctly, there was cornicing in some of the downstairs rooms, but anyway, we'll let that lie. Are there any... Councillor Thompson, sorry.
Just to address the point made by Councillor Geddes about having the property on the market for a reasonable period of time, I would point out that it was actually withdrawn from the market in August 2012, which, really kind of negates the situation of people being able to offer.
Councillor Geddes.
I'd like to respond to that, if I may, sir. I didn't say on the market. I made reference to the possibility of the development of a Buildings Preservation Trust. That was the point. That was the reason that Councillor McKee and I put forward the counter amendment. It was to give the opportunity, as it were, to develop or to see if anyone would come forward with the vehicle that had been flagged up at that time, i.e. so-called Buildings Conservation Trust, to see in fact if that could be brought into play or deployed with a view to sort of taking matters forward. That manifestly, sir, has not happened.
Councillor Thompson.
Clearly, I misrepresented what Councillor Geddes said, and I apologise for that, but I would point out that it was taken off the market.
Okay, we have a motion, we have an amendment. Claire, could you clarify the motion amendment, please?
Yes, Chairman. The motion by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Maitland, is to refuse the application on the grounds set out in the report, noting that the area planning officer would proceed with repairs notice as detailed at 4.21 in the report. The amendment by Councillor Driver, seconded by Councillor McCaughey, is to approve the application as it has been satisfactorily demonstrated that the proposal complies with demolition guidance and with conditions as detailed at 3.50 in the report. Members clear about the motion and amendment. Motion to refuse, amendment to approve. Now proceed to the vote. Chairman. Councillor Dryborough. Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Geddes. Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Yen. Councillor McCaughey. Councillor McComb. Councillor McKee. Councillor Maitland. Councillor Thompson. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 votes for the motion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 votes for the amendment. The amendment is carried. The application is approved.
Sorry, just for clarification, that's a recommendation to Historic Scotland for demolition.
Okay, can we have the people who are eligible for item 7 in the room, please? Claire, could you give us an indication of who that is for item 7? Is everybody in?
Yes, all.
No.
Are all. No, don't have anybody can. No.
Okay. The only one who declared an interest in this was Councillor Blake. Councillor Ogilvie.
Chair, just a point. I was watching this debate through with the public through there, and when you went to your motion and amendment, you couldn't hear people. This is a recorded meeting. You should be using your mic to say what you did. I know it'll be reflected in the report, but if the recording isn't picking up anybody's voices, so it's just a technical thing that you might take notice of.
We move on to item 7 on the agenda. Formation of access track, amended position to that approved under 09/P/2/0246 and 09/P/20247 at Meikle Dalbeattie. Mr. Clapworthy.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. In the report, paragraph 1.3, towards the bottom of that paragraph where it's stating the relative distances from the various properties along the Meikle Road from the proposed track, the fifth line from the bottom of that paragraph where it refers to Dwellinghouses and Mar Lodge, the figures are the wrong way round, so it would be 75 metres from Mar Lodge and 140 metres from Dwellinghouses, not the way around it's stated in the report. Okay, the proposal is for the realignment of a section of an access track that has previously been approved by both the council for a proposal for steading conversion into holiday accommodation units, and also the same track was approved by Scottish ministers and an appeal for 6 chalets at the same farm. The section that's subject to this application will be around 420 metres long, and it's proposed to be finished, as previously approved, as a twin track made up of crushed materials with a central grass verge and verges to either side. It also includes screen planting on the immediate south side of the track where it will pass through field 2. Fields 1, 2 and 3 will come clear as I show you the images. So just to take you through the slides. This is an image from the dyke that forms a boundary with the minor public road that serves Meikle. Obviously you can see the dyke in the foreground there. The track would enter the field approximately at the approximate position where the photograph's taken and make a line for on the left-hand side of the fence that you see coming in from the right-hand side, and go through a field gate that's there as you channeled into that boundary as you see in the background. The original position would have gone through the fence on the right and gone into the next field 2, at a position where there's a break in the hedgerow there beyond that fence. This is an image within field 2. That boundary there you see coming in from the right, the immediate one, is a field boundary to an adjacent field in the ownership of the applicant, which then goes on to bound the rear of another property that you'll see in the next one of the following images. The track is it will be there, channeled between the two fences. That's an image from the fence you see on the far right there, just further around the corner. This is that fence. On the original proposal that's been approved, the line of the track would have gone central through this fence, and you can just about make out possibly some flags that were being erected to show the approximate line of the approved track, so we could do a comparison. It would have dropped towards the field boundary, which is a dyke, just slightly to the right of the centre of the image, whereas the proposal obviously you can see the wet area shining, the track would follow that area and go through the existing field boundary that you can see there's a gap in the dike. This is an image in an intervening field between the track as proposed and the nearest property as it comes through field 2, which is Spycraig. So you've got the garden coming down, it's vegetated, there's a boundary to that garden, then there's this field, and then that's panning right from that image, sorry, panning left, to bring you to where the track will be between the two fences there. This is an image from the side of that same property we've just seen, from a point on the public road. You can see just about the you can make out the distance there. The track will be beyond the livestock fence there, about around 75 metres from the rear of this property. This is now an image from what I'm called field 3, which is the last field that the proposal will come into before meeting the remainder of the approved track. It will come into this field. You can see the dike in the centre of the image, and mid right you can see the opening in the dike. It will enter this field there and then come across the wet area to rejoin the approved track somewhere on the left of that image, just beyond the wet area. That's panning right. It's given you an impression of the distance between where it come into this field and nearest properties, and then I'll pan. So I'm stood on a high point in field 3, panning right again. That's what you can just about catch is a property called Garvier, and then Mar Lodge in the centre of the image. That's the route of the proposed access road track as proposed, following the red edge site, and annotated onto that is an approximate position of what had previously been approved in the hatch line, with the greatest variation being where it would have entered between fields 2 and 3 on the left part, just as you're coming back to the green coloured access track. It would have gone through, just to take you back to the image, it would have gone through. You'd have to create a new opening in the dike, probably about above the shadow there, and would have come back up the side of this minor rise I'm on, back into the left. It's 420 metres. Within field 2, there'll be an area of planting on the southern verge, between the space between the access track and the actual livestock fence. And that's an image of the previously approved entire route. In the context of the previously approved proposals, it's considered the proposal is relatively minor. It relates to a 420 metre section of a previously approved access track as a substitution for what's previously been approved. All the principal material matters are considered in the report, and it's considered that the proposal would not have any unacceptable impacts as detailed, and the recommendation is therefore to approve subject to the conditions suggested. Nothing further to add at this stage.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to continue that. Yesterday, as you'll be aware, I was emailed a copy of a letter sent to members by Mr. and Mrs. Edwards. I've already thanked Mr. and Mrs. Edwards for making me aware of their concerns, and it has given me the opportunity to look into the points raised in the letter in advance of this meeting. I would advise if they can write a version directly to me, I will be happy to respond, as the letter raises fairly detailed matters of process. I'm conscious that matters of process do not fall within the remit of the Planning Applications Committee, but having said that, and with your permission, Chair, if it provides members with comfort, I can provide a brief verbal response today to some of the matters raised. Thank you. I have looked into the concerns surrounding the status of plans AL (0112C) and AL 0127 revision B. I can clarify that the appeal relating to planning application 09P2247 makes specific reference on the front of the decision notice to Plan AL0127 Revision B and not to Plan AL0112C. I'm therefore satisfied that this is the correct plan to refer to in relation to the position of the access track as approved, acknowledging at the same time that the decision notice in relation to planning application 09P2246 was ambiguous, as it made reference to both of these plans as approved plans, and I'm also aware that a reduced photocopied version of Plan AL0112C appeared on page 20 of the Stewardship Area Committee papers of the 16th of June 2010. This should not have happened. This was an error on my part, for which I apologise. Having said that, having reviewed the content of that report, I am satisfied that the text in the report relates to Plan AL0127 Revision B rather than Plan AL0112C. Obviously, the purpose of the meeting today is to consider the application on its own merits. There is an extant planning decision and an appeal decision as well. It's obviously for members today to decide whether or not the changes proposed, as Mr Clapworthy has detailed and discussed in the report, merit your support and approval, or whether it merits refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions for the planning officers? Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you. The application for the chalets, which was refused at Area Committee, then went to appeal and was granted. But on granting that appeal, it was granted on that original track access. Yes?
The plan which refers, this is, the plan you see in front of you is a copied version of Plan AL0127 Revision B, and that is the plan that's referred to in the reporter's decision notice in connection with the appeal. I have a copy of the reporter's decision notice.
So the reporter took the decision on the original access track? No? Oh, yeah.
Chair, if I can clarify, this is an amended location plan that was submitted during the application. I can give you a precise date for that. It was submitted on the 12th of January 2010 as an amended plan before the decision was taken. This was the plan that the reporter looked at relative to that appeal, because it's the one that's referenced on the front of the decision notice and not the other plan.
Councillor McCaughey.
So what's showing on the screen there is what was approved the first time. Yep. And we're considering today the amendment. I mean, to be honest, I've got a difficulty with trying to follow, because the whole nub of this argument is about amenity. And it's very hard to tell from the photographs exactly how the amenity is affected in relation to the properties. And I'm really, before we get into session, just going to ask if it's possible to go on a site visit and try and get this into context. Because you can't get the proper context about buildings and roads, etc., by looking at all these individual photographs. And I think the only fair way to do it would be a site visit and then go into session. I really believe that, because it's very difficult to get an overview of how the properties are affected by the development.
I'm advised that we've got to hear the representatives first, and then we can have a site. You can propose a site visit at that point. Any other questions for the planning officers, Councillor Gilroy?
And the only reason that this is now here is because the land has been sold that the original track was on. Is that right?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. If there are no other questions for the officer, we'll go to the representatives. Okay. Mr. Kender, on behalf of Mrs. McGeever. Mr. Kender, if you could take your seat, please, sir. You have 3 minutes, sir.
My name is Alan Kinder. I'm a chartered town planner, and I represent residents of Michael Rycorn who are vehemently opposed to this latest application. They are left in a position of damage limitation due to the actions of an applicant who clearly flouts planning regulations and restrictive conditions initially imposed by members of this committee. I understand that they have written to you detailing their concerns under separate cover within the last few days, and I do not wish to reiterate the points made in their detailed representations. In the short time I have available, I propose to summarise the salient points as to why, as a committee, you should, in our view, firmly reject this latest proposal, which will undoubtedly cause significant harm to the residential amenity of my clients, who will be subjected to an increase in prominence of the track, and more importantly, the vehicles using it may, not simply due to their closer proximity to their properties, but most significantly because it will bring about the track being forward of natural landforms, which would have created a buffer where, for certain sections of its length, it would have been not been visible from their properties. As a direct result of this intended realignment, then my clients would have to endure the problems of headlights shining directly into the rear of their properties to an unacceptable degree, a problem which would not arise with the initial approved route. A further significant point is that Adrian Pringle, the council's own landscape architect, was consulted back in 2009 on the first application and only conceded that revision C route, and I emphasise that because I think there's an awful lot of confusion here, to be acceptable in landscape terms due to its sensitive alignment. This latest route is more prominent in the landscape, running over the top of knolls, and rather telling, Mr. Pringle's views on this latest application have
30
not...
seconds, sir.
Sorry? Thank you. Am I going to be given more time because I've been interrupted a couple of times or not?
You have 3 minutes to speak, sir. I will give you, as a discretion, I will give you a little more time.
Thank you. As I was suggesting, Mr. Pringle's views on this latest application have not been sought. I'll leave members of this committee to ponder why this may be the case. In summary, on behalf of my clients, I would commend councillors to reject the application for 2 reasons. The first being the adverse impact on this designated national scenic area, and specifically being at variance with policies E1 and E3 of the Dumfries and Galloway Structure Plan and policy 41 of the Stewartry Local Plan. All of these policies having a presumption of conserving the natural heritage and landscape character. Additionally, the second reason is the undoubted adverse impact on residential amenity on nearby residential amenity due to the negative impacts of car headlights and general light pollution. Thank you, Chair. I will take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beaver. Mr. Kender, sorry. Any questions for Mr. Kender at this point? Okay. You have a further 3 minutes on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Wood.
Yes, I would like to, Mr. Khan, Chair. I'd like to come back in terms of the information that's been supplied by your planning officer this morning in terms of the legitimacy of the plan that's actually facing us at the moment. There's an awful lot of misrepresentation concerning this. I made reference to Mr. Pringle's points made in respect to previous applications back in 2009. His points referred to revision C included passing places. Revision B that we're now have any passing places. Addition passing places. Equally, when the reporter came to site, part of her site inspection actually shown revision C and walk. There are clearly administrative errors which can. This is a point that has been brought out representation by Mr. I don't think a safe decision is likely to try and approve it. Equally, choose to refuse perfectly good.
This proposal relates to question previously approved planning permission. Says that facility will take from the existing route into Bellevilla Hill Farm, which Red Kite sent lorries. Then when they were implementing the planning permission, they started to partially excavate further. So we have to make approaches to the applicant and subsequently add this application. It also includes proposal for the alternative access question and 8 flood, not 12. The application. So a few floodlight goes around question. That's the point of the access off public road looking west towards the small buildings of Bellevilla. In the opposite direction, looking east towards. That's partially excavated track going down the side of the dike there. We're not too far in. Winds back track. Small building there. Panning left on the previous image. Proposal would take access probably central in that. So this track take a sharp left on that where it hits boundary, cross the image, and then public road about centre. Public road. This is looking back up, so going back up the way towards the approved question proposal. Topsoil piled on. This is question facility partially implemented. Size in the middle. Panning. Cultural from state park approval. Outdoor. The flat area there. Down floodlight. 2 roads going away from the was in as well. Well, that's been that's just an impression of the site on the top. Can't really. Initial rise quite steep as you go into level. Push further back. Plateau. That's an image in there. See the question building. Basically horizon. That's plan of the proposed access route. You can see winding down on the left of the image there, where I was explaining previously, takes a sharp going right on this image before it through an existing goes parallel to the public road, then enters in the middle of that image. That's at the advice of the roads office, so appropriate visibility could be achieved. That's a lighting column, narrow 8-metre high column with a downlighter 4 outside. Some issues relate to road safety and impacts. Those are the issues that have largely been raised by objectors. They're highlighted at 3.1 of the report. Council's roads officer supports the proposal subject to the conditions suggested, therefore satisfied that the access of this position onto the public road will not unacceptably impact on road safety. Council's design engineering section, streetlights, provided specific comment on the floodlighting issue relative to the objections that resulted in a reduction of the number of floodlights from 12 to 8, and stated that given the distance from neighbouring properties, 250 metres plus, position the relative position at a higher level plateau, and stated levels in the specification of floodlights, got no concerns, doesn't share the objections, doesn't object. Therefore, it's recommended that the proposal is approved subject to conditions stated in the report.
Or it still is there? What you're saying is it still is
Behind the shed relative to the public road?
well, public road is near.
Yep. Well, the question centre is still in the same position as approved on the original. Right. It's the building that's changed position. And I'm not sure exactly what position that is in, because it's subject to a very recent visit, and the applicant has been encouraged to submit a request for a variation to the original planning permission. So I'm not sure of the exact details because that hasn't been surveyed and provided at this stage.
Councillor McComb.
Thanks, Chair. Just looking at the plan here, I gather there is a junction on the bend at the moment. There is an existing junction. That's what the plan shows in. What would the distance be from the proposed junction to the existing one, the proposed access?
Can I just get clarification on that in the images? Because I think the junction you're referring to is just there, leaving the road on the left.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not something that's been provided, so it'd be an estimate at this stage. All I would say is that the roads officer has encouraged the access to be in this position and then supported it. This application, well, the inclusion of the access track in this application came about because they started to implement what looked like a new route, and neighbours inquired with us because it was supposed to be routed through via the existing track that serves the Red Kite Centre. So they were stopped generally at the stage that you see in the images. You know, they'd taken the topsoil off, piled it to the side, and they'd stopped generally where on that image before the sharp right, the track that's been implemented or partially excavated so far stopped at that sharp right. All I can say is I don't know the distance, but I know that obviously the roads officer who reported it is satisfied with the access at the point it hits the public road, but I can't confirm the distance between where that had hit the public road and that existing access there. I could only estimate, and I wouldn't want to estimate because I might be found to be wrong.
Councillor McComb.
Chair, according to the scale in the plan we were given, it appears to be about 40 metres. It is a very short distance.
Councillor McCochtry.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty straightforward when I read the report. It's getting more and more complicated now. First of all, we're told that something was granted by officers under delegated powers. Now we're hearing there's going to be a variation because they built the shed in the wrong place. Now, does that have to come back to the officer, or does that come back to this committee? Because if that's the case, and again, the point about the access here, if there's a further planning application, why waste time in this today? Consider them both together at a future meeting. Because this thing's just a mishmash. As I say, it was pretty simple when you read the report. The more I'm hearing about it today, it's a lot of disgrace.
Robert.
Chair, I'm quite happy to clarify. We received a retrospective application in the circumstances Dean described. There was a recent site visit by the planning inspector. Position of the building relative to floodlit area has changed slightly, so the advice has been firstly to submit an application for a non-material variation. That is basically a mechanism whereby they submit a change, minor change, will change the substance of the proposal, then we exercise discretion as officers, and by exchange of letters agree to a non-material variation. If it's what's known as a material change, i.e. something substantially different to what is on the table here today, what members of the public have seen, consultees have seen, and officers have based the recommendation on, then we would encourage the submission of a retrospective planning application. Until such time we've got the detail of that, one or the other, until I've got the detail of that, I'm afraid I can't advise members of a fresh application is necessary in that respect.
Councillor Maitland.
Well, I sympathise with members, but we are being asked to look at the new access, the erection date downlighting, and the access angle of it. I actually am a bit calmer about this because I can see nuisance factors.
Is this a question, Jane?
Yes, it is. Going on. What it's going to go on to say is, are there houses opposite the current? Have I got that right? There are houses opposite the current access. The red kite. No, that's not the red kite. That's the new one. It's the old one. I think there would have been houses opposite, therefore much more nuisance, much more with cars coming up and down that. So I mean, I think this is actually an improvement. And if the roads officer says, I'm asking a question whether there are houses opposite that.
Thank you for that.
The current access, or the access that was suggested in the approval of the Equestrian Centre, was via the existing track that serves the Red Kite Viewing Centre. That centre, that access is beyond the small building group in that image there. So there are no houses opposite that access. This small building group is in between the proposed access and the one that's approved.
Are there any more questions before we go into session? Okay, we're in session, ladies and gentlemen. Councillor Geddes.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, so the matters of your compass, I think the application as submitted should be supported on the basis of
Councillor Maitland.
I'm minded to agree. The only thing that I am concerned with is always the case of lighting in the countryside, like this. But if the planners are absolutely satisfied that will be suitably dampened, suitably downward pointing, they've taken on account the topography, it is slightly raised, then in principle I have no difficulty. Question whether they're absolutely sure that we're not going to get spillage because it is on an elevated.
Are you happy with that?
If I could draw members' attention to paragraphs 4.7 and 4.8. We refer to the council's design engineering section, but without wishing to name names, there is a specialist within there that has looked at street lighting, and for example, the new pilot LED street lighting in St John's Town of Ryan Carsway, and so he's well versed and up to speed on appropriate solutions taking account of the Dark Sky Park. And although it's not in the development plan, it is something we take seriously when we look at planning applications, because there's an overall benefit to the community.
Okay, we have a motion. Anyone otherwise minded? No?
Chairman, decision is to approve this application subject to conditions outlined.
Thank you, Claire. Move on to item 9, siting of a mobile snack bar. Sorry, two have to escape here. Sorry. Please don't attack the pies too early. I'll not comment on that. Right, item 9, siting of mobile snack bar for a temporary period of 3 years at site adjacent to 19 Briarbank, Bain Loaning, Dumfries. Mr. Robinson.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll just get a slide. Okay, yes, this planning application is seeking temporary planning permission for a period of 3 years to site a mobile snack bar that would sell hot food and refreshments. The snack bar is the location of the site is shown in red there, and it would be located on the southern side of Bain Loaning, which leads off Lockerbie Road. To the north of the site is Dumfries High School and an athletic centre, which both share the same access. To the west of the site is a row of terrace properties on Briarbank. To the south of the site is a row of houses that front Lockerbie Road, and to the southeast of the site is a grassed area and an off-street car parking area. This site plan shows the site itself, and you can see the location of where the snack bar would be, and also ancillary equipment such as picnic tables and litter bins. There's one car parking space proposed on the site, and the access to the site is in the northeastern corner, the red line boundary. In terms of the appearance of the site's enclosed by a 1 to 1.3 metre high wall, and the snack bar would be viewed behind the white wall, which this photograph is taken from the access to the high school and the athletic centre. This photograph is also taken from that location, and you can see the access to the site, and in the distance you can see the grassed area as well as the off-street car parking, which I referred to earlier. This is the row of terrace properties to the west of the site on Briarbank. And in terms of the appearance of the site, it's just a grassed over brownfield site. And if you look at the planning history section, it does currently have planning permission for a dwelling house, which was approved earlier this year. And you can see the gable end of the adjoining residential property. This is the appearance of the school, which is opposite the site. And from the access to the site, you can see where the access is to the high school as well as the athletic centre. And this final photograph shows the wider context of the site, where you'd view the snack bar against the gable end of the properties, and the access, which you can see on the right-hand side of the photograph. After assessing all the information submitted, the consultation response and representations received against the development plan policies, officers are of the opinion that the hot food snack bar would give rise to an unacceptable environmental impact to neighbouring properties due to the uncontrolled odour pollution that would be emitted which would give rise to a material degree of land use conflict with these adjoining neighbouring properties, which is contrary to General Policies 1, 2D and 12 of the Nithsdale Local Plan. It's also considered that whilst the snack bar is in operation, its visual appearance would detract from the appearance of the locality and be at odds to the general character and appearance of the residential group of buildings, an adjacent area of which it would form a part, which is contrary to General Policies 1 and 7 of the Nithsdale Local Plan. And as a result, the application is recommended for refusal for the reasons stated in the report of handling.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Any questions for the officer? No? Okay, we're in session, folks. Oh, sorry, my mistake. We have a speaker. Ms. Donna Graham, if you could come forward to the microphone. Dawn, please. You have 3 minutes to put your submission forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. This was an email that was sent to Andrew Robinson last Friday. It's from Alex, who owns the land. He says, I am planning to lease a plot of land on Bain Loaning in Dumfries to Donna Graham for the purpose of placing a non-permanent food outlet. The land has planning permission for a 2-storey house, and I was planning to sell the plot, but as you know, the property market is very quiet at the moment, and I have had no interest in the plot. So rather than leave the plot, I would rather it was used, so hence to lease out for 3 years. I will be putting the plot back on the market at some point. So it is in my interest to keep the surrounding area and the plot of land in good order. I have met with Donna and have made my position clear to her, and my family have lived in the area for over 37 years, and I know most of the neighbours there. Although I now live in Northern Ireland, I would rather the land was put to use rather than lying derelict as it is at the moment. Furthermore, Donna knows I would expect the area to be kept in good order with plenty of rubbish bins provided, and the area around the land to be regularly policed for litter. This is an excellent opportunity for Donna as a business, and it will provide a service in the area and to the school, as well as supporting a new local business. As long as all the points that will be in the lease agreement are adhered to, I will be happy to lease the plot to her. If Dumfries and Galloway Council have any point they would like included in the lease agreement, I would be more than happy to look at that. And just another couple of points. And for myself speaking, the only kids' interest for healthy eating and to establish my own business employment, not only in Dumfries and Galloway but are over, is decreasing, and would like to make a living of my own as employment is hard to find. The situation for site for Snack Bar would be ideal, as children wouldn't have to cross the busy roads to go to the Annan Road, Balmoral Road and Tesco Lockerbie Road as they do at the moment. Reading all the rejections, I can say that there wouldn't be noise, as there would be no generator, as there is an actual electricity point there to supply my snack bar. And as I said before, the owner is more than willing to lease the land for a temporary period of 3 years, as no land is selling due to the state of the price of the land. There will be possibly no overspilling of children on the footpath, as there is a garden area for kids to queue on, so no congestion on the pavement. There is also a car park to the left of the site for parking, so it would avoid congestion for vehicles on Bain Road. And there would also be possible employment if need be for others as well. That's it. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Graham? No? Councillor Maitland, sorry.
Yes, I think I do actually. What do you plan this snack bar to actually look like?
As a snack bar looks like, but I was going to say as well, I would actually paint it as well in colour with the surrounding area to actually blend in, rather than stick out like a sore thumb, so to speak.
I mean, may I ask, is it to be a porter cabin arrangement?
Yes, possibly.
Any further questions? No, you can take your seat. Thank you. We're in session, ladies and gentlemen. Councillor Dryburgh.
Yeah, we're not in a position to try and stop people, doing well with their businesses and things like that. And of course, the owner of the land has said that he would look to us to if we needed to put any conditions on and given this licence. My concern is it not only goes against planning consents, it also goes against things like, potentially goes against, I'm not saying it does, the good food guide that we're having for children and things like that. So looking at this whole planning application and the recommendations that goes with it, I'm proposing that we go with the recommendation to refuse, mainly because of the road safety issues and the other things that we have to consider as councillors with food and that way for our children.
Councillor Geddes.
Thanks, sir. I may say that I support Councillor Dryburgh, but not without a certain degree of sadness, because, and it's strictly on the terms of the set out in the report. I think the report's a quality report. It sets out clearly and precisely why we should refuse the application. Nevertheless, here we have a young woman, who's before us today. She's keen, in fact, to sort of set up a business and develop it. And as I've said previously in this chamber, in this committee, we've got to get the message across that Dumfries and Galloway is open for business. We've got to create conditions, to allow young entrepreneurs, etc., to flourish. Regrettably, in this particular instance, the proposed location, militates against these. And as I've said, I support Councillor Dryburgh, but it's with a certain degree of, concern that, and I would hope that the applicant, if that's the finding of the committee, the applicant will not be too put off and perhaps would be looking, as it were, for an alternative location at some future date. That's the subject of another application, of course. But as I say, that you know what I'm trying to say to you.
Yeah, it's showing initiative. Councillor Maitland.
Well, I want to tease members slightly because we're being told that this would appear visually incongruous. Bearing in mind we don't know what it's going to look like, I don't know how we can actually put that into our recommendation to refuse. The sighting of a mobile hot food snack bar, it could be a very neat arrangement that didn't actually look anything different to a single garage on that plot. However, I'm inclined to agree all right with the members.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I'm just referring to page 78 of 176. Very clear in italics, objections being raised and not material planning considerations. And some of the things that have been said by my colleagues just in the last few minutes actually fall, I would suggest, into that category. So therefore, shouldn't be a planning consideration. And whilst I have a great sympathy in some of what Garrison in particular was saying, we have a young entrepreneur here who's actually seen an opportunity, and let's not kid ourselves, this isn't got to be a flood of people coming in double-decker buses who are here on holiday who are going to be using this place. It's strategically sited right beside the school, and that shouldn't be a planning application. In fact, odour, again, there are means of controlling that. So I actually think we should be potentially giving her the benefit of the doubt here, at least look at it until we know such time, as Maitland said, exactly what type of facility she's going to put in here. We'll have to give her the benefit of the doubt, would be my suggestion at this stage.
Councillor Geddes.
For the record, sir, just as well, I'm referring to my colleague through you. I was quite clear in pointing out that it was for the reasons indicated in the report, and these are sustainable planning grounds for refusal as far as I'm concerned. It was for that and no other reason. Far be it from me in my state of decrepitude to be lecturing others and exercising noblesse oblige what they may or may not eat.
Yes. We'll say no more. We have a motion. Do we have an amendment? No? Claire? Sorry.
I'm quite serious, actually. Can we, in fact, include that second issue, bearing in mind we don't know what it looks like? Can we include that? Is that a reasonable thing to include?
There was a design statement that was submitted with the application, which gave a written description of what the proposed snack bar would look like, and I may as well just read that out. It says temporary planning consent is sought for the location on the site of a mobile snack bar. The snack bar is a trailer on wheels with a tow bar, and it is proposed to site this on an existing hard standing used for a long time as a caravan site. And the design statement goes on to say that the existing gates and boundary walls will be retained, the garden will be tidied and maintained, picnic tables and benches may be placed within the garden in front of the snack bar for use of customers. Officers have taken the decision, we've taken that statement on board, that the snack bar is a trailer on wheels with a tow bar. And if I can just refer to General Policy 7 of the Nithsdale Local Plan, the first point of General Policy 7 states that the Council's planning authority will require development to have regard to the character and appearance, scale, density, massing, and materials of the building, group of buildings or adjacent area of which it will form part. And it's the opinion of officers that a snack bar with a trailer on wheels would not comply with that aspect of the policy, given that the character of the area is generally sandstone terrace houses. The school, with its scale being an anomaly, but effectively it's a residential area, and something that appears with a trailer on wheels, in this instance, would not comply with that aspect of the policy.
Right. Would the owner of the land be permitted to park a caravan?
Depends what it would be used for. A caravan, in planning terms, is regarded as chattel. In this case, the application is seeking permission for the use of the land to sell hot food takeaway from. So we've assessed it on the use of the land. A caravan could be used for any purposes. We wouldn't necessarily, if an application came in to use the land as a caravan, we would assess it against the use of the land and also what the caravan would appear like.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have an amendment? No? Okay, Claire?
Chairman, the application is refused on the grounds set out in the report.
Thank you, members. I propose that we break for lunch at this point. We'll adjourn for till 1:15. Okay? If Councillor McCourtry has left us any pies. Next application is item 10 the agenda. Application to delete condition 1, excluding use for competitions and public performances, and vary condition 3, restricting hours of operation on planning permission 12P4 003 at Maxwell Place, Langham. Lindsay Brown, please.
Thank you, Chair. If you'd like to look at the location plan on page 83 of the committee papers, then I'll take you through the photographs. This first photograph has been taken from Maxwell Road, and it's approaching the site from the east. Charlotte Street, whose gardens back onto Maxwell Place, can be seen to the left, and the entrance to Maxwell Place is behind the white van in the centre of the photograph. The local road network leading to the site is restricted with narrow carriageways, limited footways, tight corners and on-street parking. It should be noted that these photographs have been taken through the day when these residential streets are at their quietest, so the full extent of on-street parking cannot be seen. Moving along Maxwell Road, the entrance to Maxwell Place can be seen on the left. This is a potential point of conflict. It's a restricted junction, narrow in width, and visibility is restricted to the west by the garden wall and by vehicles parked on the street to the east. And access for large vehicles, including buses or coaches, is limited. Turning into Maxwell Place, the generally residential nature of the street can be seen. It's also clear that with on-street parking, only a single carriageway would be left for vehicles to travel, and vehicles parked close to the junction with Maxwell Road would require those turning into Maxwell Place to cross onto the opposite carriageway. Moving along Maxwell Place, the application site is the white building to the right of the photograph with a small parking area to the front. This photograph shows the building subject to the application, together with its associated off-street parking area. The parking area can accommodate approximately 7 cars. However, the appropriate level of parking for the proposed development is 23 car parking spaces. Moving along Maxwell Place again, this photograph is taken looking in a westerly direction along the south end of the application site. The bowling green lies beyond the hedge in the centre of the photograph, and the flats and their associated residence parking is to the left at the end of the street. Turning round 90 degrees, this photograph looks back in a northerly direction along Maxwell. And moving back out onto Maxwell Road, this photograph is taken from the west of the junction, looking back towards the entrance to Maxwell Place. And this final photograph is taken further west again on Maxwell Road. It's looking south across the tennis courts to the application site. It's acknowledged that the tennis courts and the bowling green will have some existing demand for parking, but with the current proposals, there will be a further increase in the demand for parking in the locality. This is the location plan, which shows the relationship of the application site, tennis courts, the bowling green, and surrounding residential development. And this final slide shows the floor plan of the building. There's 2 studios, and it's been indicated that classes would hold between 10 and 12 people, on average resulting in 20 to 25 people using the building at any one time. And under the current planning permission, which is 12P40003, no public performances or competitions can be held.
Thank you. Any questions for the officer? Councillor McCocktree.
Chairman, just under 1.1, it states that this application will not require to be considered by the Planning Applications Committee. However, the appointed officer considers it appropriate to refer it to committee. Can you give us the reasons why you brought it to committee rather than making the decision yourself?
This application, the previous application, when it came to be decided, it was a delegated decision. And the application was accompanied by very strict criteria as to how it would be operated. And it was in that context that we considered that this was a very good proposal. In itself, it is a very good proposal, but because of the conditions and the circumstances proposed previously, we thought we could support it because the times when the roads would be congested, whereas Lindsay said at least point when there would be capacity. However, when the application went out, we then understood that actually they didn't really want to have that level of conditions on it. So in that context, they've reapplied. Now, as a planning service, we consider, and as officers, we consider that this is in itself a very good scheme, but it raises wider issues. And in the context of the wider issues, we're recommending refusal because of the nature of the conflict between the proposed use, which is good in itself, but actually the road conditions, the circumstances around it, the times they want to use it. And in that sense, we consider it actually should be considered in the public domain and aired properly in order to get a proper resolution. And it's for that reason that
Thank you.
I'm very grateful for that. It makes a change for us passing the buck to officers here, passing the buck to us. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ferguson.
I'm not sure if it's the right time or wait till later, but have we got any evidence of volume of traffic using the other facilities in direct location to this site?
No, we've not been provided with any indication as to the existing level of demand for parking for the bowling green or the tennis courts. There is no dedicated parking for either of these facilities, so it would be on street as well.
Thank you. Again, probably maybe better leave it till we're in session, I think. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the officers? Councillor Maitland.
It was just about the tennis courts. I mean, if you look at the picture, I'm not very certain there's a tremendous use of tennis court. Do you use that as a tennis court?
I don't know whether the use as actual tennis courts is all that much, but I understand that it is being used by one of the local childcare groups as an additional playing area.
It'll keep them fenced in. Any other?
There's only part of the tennis courts that's actually being used by the childcare facility. It's not all of the tennis court that's being used for that.
Okay. Any other questions? That's because we have two speakers. Okay. We'll move on now to the speakers. We have Helen Story and Hilary Jack. The applicant, could you come forward to the microphones, please? Ladies, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. My name's Helen Story, and I'm the Estates Manager for the applicant, Ashley Bank Investments. On the 18th of July last year, we received planning consent for the change of use for this building from former weaving mill to multi-purpose arts and leisure facility. Unfortunately, 2 of the 3 conditions imposed on this consent were considered to be so restrictive that the project would have become non-viable, and so an application to remove these conditions was made on 29th of August. Condition 1 states that no competitions or public performances shall be held. Whilst this is not likely to happen often, we would prefer the flexibility to hold occasional competitions, although we have already stated that we would restrict this to a maximum of 4 per year. Condition 3, however, causes us a real problem, and I would now like to ask my colleague Hilary Jack to say a few words about this.
Thank you, Helen. As you'll be aware, Langham is an archetypal disadvantaged rural community with few local employment opportunities and very few good quality facilities for young people. It's a matter of some considerable achievement that it's been possible to raise £225,000 current economic climate funded prepared to back the government's aspirations of the studio. The project is supported by virtually every group in Langham concerned with the arts, improving the lot of the arts. It will provide a dedicated rehearsal, practice and storage space, not only for all the arts groups currently connected to the Clue Centre, but also for various other groups in the town who currently struggle to make appropriate venue activities. In particular, it will provide fit-for-purpose dance facilities used by local dancers and by Langham Council. If the hours of activity at the studio are not extended to include daytime and weekends, the project cannot be financially self-sustaining, it will not meet the conditions of funders, and it will not go ahead. Whilst most rehearsals and sports sessions will take place on weekday evenings, the venue would not be suitable for preschool children, for the dance sessions planned by the school, theatrical rehearsals involving children, or for family activities such as scenery design and painting can only take place at weekends and at night.
So we have already made significant compromises to meet the concerns regarding road safety and conflict of use, including a restriction on the maximum number of competitions or performances, additional car parking at Ashley Bank House, situated nearby, for any competitions, no buses on site, and a restriction on the amount of people using the facility at any one time. In reality, the property is situated in a town centre location, and the vast majority of people using it will either walk to the venue or park elsewhere. It would be a real tragedy for the local community, and in particular the young people, if such a valuable facility was not to proceed after substantial funding has been secured, and I would ask you to support this application in its revised form. Thank you, Chairman. We will take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ladies Councillor Dryborough?
Thanks, Chair. And look at the alternative arrangements for car parking for buses and things like that. And you see Ashley Bank House is a potential area where, are there any other areas close by that, and you say it's only going to be perhaps 4 times a year, are there any other areas in that particular area that can be used or utilised for buses and for attendants to attend the 4 things a year? Plus, how large amount of people do you actually see attending those events?
I'll answer the point about the parking facilities, if I may. The reason Ashley Bank has been offered is that we own Ashley Bank House and we can control that and make it available. All of the parking in Langham is potentially available to this site because it is very central. So, as well as Ashley Bank, which has plenty of parking, there will be the whole of the public parking available in the town. Hilary, would you like to answer the other point?
wouldn't really envisage many or perhaps any public performances in the studio because the McClue Centre is equipped much better for that sort of thing. We have perfectly adequate. The reason that we'd like to keep our options open on this is because some of the sports facilities, such as kickboxing, that might want to use the premise, may want to hold competitions or grading competitions. Don't understand that would bust.
Councillor Gilroy.
Yes, it's about the funding you mentioned, which you've done really well. But you said that that was only going to be achievable if you got removed. Is that completely, or what restrictions have been put on you with your funds?
A large part of the funding that we got was from the Hollywood Trust, which is focused particularly on funding facilities for young people. If the facility is only available in the evening, it's school from using it, and if it's not available at weekends, it's a good time to provide activities for them so that they're not late nights. We won't get the usage that we will make into our funding.
It's another question, and sorry I was late for the start of this, so it may have come up in the presentation beforehand. But you're not in competition to the Crew Centre. You are, I assume anyway. So I just want to be reassured that you are working together so that it's competition.
Absolutely not in competition. This is an addition. The Crew Centres are been so successful that we can't accommodate all the groups that want to actually do things. The Crew Centre would be the tenants of this facility, manage it through this committee.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. I'm taking from this as the Woolen Mills continued help in the development of community facilities within Langham. Yep. I know that, for example, we've got the British Legion and we've got the bowling club very close. Because I know that local, they don't create significant traffic problems, I'm led to believe. Would any event you would have in there be a smaller thing, for example, than a bowling competition at the nearby thing, or some function happening at the British Legion? In terms of numbers, can you give us an indication just exactly how many people you'd be talking about going in maybe at any one time? Appreciate it's a best guess, but it would be helpful if you could.
The largest use of this facility will be for rehearsals and practice sessions. So it's clubs, small rehearsal groups. Would be no reason for anyone to put on a large scale arts production in the studio because there's no rate seating. The Crew Centre would be the place to do that. The only event that we can imagine that might happen there would be something like an exhibition, something like that, probably with friends and family.
Thanks. That was where my follow-on was coming from. Because on the map, on the drawing, we saw there was a sort of dual use. One was the kickboxing club on the other side, and the vast majority of the dance studio one side, so that's a practice side, and the other side for the kickboxing, that's ring storage. And any grading would be done for the kickboxing would be done on that side of the building, I'm assuming. And how often, does any idea how often that happens?
If it would help, I could kind of explain from the drawing. The dance studio in rehearsal one, that would have a sprung floor, designed for dancing, mirrored walls. It would also be marked out with a stage area on the floor that would exactly mirror the stage at the Crew Centre, so that when arts used it, they would be rehearsing exactly the same space performing at the Crew Centre. The other side, rehearsal area 2, would have the Thai boxing ring permanently in position at the far end, and the rest of that would be for painting scenery and that sort of thing. And up the dividing wall on each side, storage right up there.
Thank you, because you've answered my question, because it's not only for artistic purposes for the Crew Hall or the Crew Centre, it's also for recreational purposes for local youngsters.
You mentioned in your submission car parking in Ashley Bank House be used as an alternative car park. Could you give me some indication how far away that is and what direction it's in? Plus, what is the relation of the local authority car parks in relation to this building?
Yes, Ashley Bank House is approximately, I understand, 300 to 400 yards from the site, so not very far at all. The main public parking for Langham is at the other end of the main street, but is perfectly within walking distance.
Councillor Geddes.
Delighted, sir, you asked the question, because it seems to me that we're becoming increasingly fixated as a society with the necessity, as it were, basically to just about park in a shop window when you're going to shops, etc. I mean, what's the issue? I mean, very often we go to Ayr shopping or Carlisle. You know, you're walking maybe half, 3/4 of a mile to get to the shops you're looking for anyway, and it's no big deal as far as I'm concerned. In fact, it's actually beneficial from a health point of view, you know, to park and walk. And at the end of the day, as I say, I've heard Mrs. Kay and Lindsay, the case officer, make reference to the fact in itself that this is a superb project. And I think when we get to the debate stage, I would hope that we can deal with the issue of car parking in a sensible fashion.
Any further questions for the two ladies? Councillor McCall.
Thanks, Chair. What proposals would you have, ladies, for disabled parking, for access for disabled visitors?
I'm not familiar with the exact arrangements, but I know that our agents have considered the requirements for disabled, and it will meet those requirements. There will be a disabled facility.
Yes, but I'm referring to the possibility of a performance taking place where there may be a requirement for 4 or 5 disabled parking spaces.
The spaces we're able to provide on site are 7 spaces. I'm not familiar with exactly how many of those will be disabled, but I know that we will be meeting disabled requirements.
Any further questions? Okay, you can take your seats, ladies. Thank you very much. We're in session. Councillor Dryborough.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, listen to the questions here. It clarified quite a few points for me in this particular area. As members well know, Langham is in an ideal location for having interests such as this for the community within Langham itself. The local public transport system isn't the best. There's a lot of facilities in Langham, but they don't cater for this particular route. I'm of a mind to actually accept this, as long as there were some conditions on not the use of buses, for instance. And if that's an arrangement that can be put in place by the applicants to ensure that buses are not on site, then I've got absolutely no problem in actually accepting this particular application. I think it's good for the health and well-being of youngsters. It certainly gets sport involved and dancing involved in Langham. So I'm quite prepared to accept this application and the planning principles. I believe in the General Policy 1, 2 and 76 will be met, as long as that condition is actually in place.
Thank you. Councillor Geddes.
I would certainly support that, sir. I go back to the comment I made earlier. I mean, Mrs. Kay and case officer have made it abundantly clear that this is a quality project. Let's start off from the perspective of recognising, accepting that, and making sure, in fact, we can do it in such a fashion that it works. The issue, I agree entirely with Archie. I think, you know, I would also ask that perhaps we look at another aspect, or I think it was Councillor McComb that raised the issue of disabled parking. And I think we should be looking perhaps at some form of provision for disabled parking, making sure there are no buses, as it were, you know, permitted. And as for the rest, you know, goodness me, it's not too much of a hardship, surely, to park your car 300-400 yards away, or maybe even slightly further away, and walk, you know, to the area to ensure, in fact, you're acting responsibly. And at the end of the day, you know, this thing works. It's granted works, and is a success that we all hope it will be. And if Archie's moving a motion, I'd second them.
Councillor McCall.
just to totally agree with what Alistair says, this is about Thai boxing and dancing. The people that will go there will be pretty fit people anyway, and if there are disabled accessibility places in place, I'm fully in support of that.
Councillor McCoskey.
Thanks, Chairman. But whilst I'm happy with the idea, I think that with the best will in the world, you could say that folk will park further away and will walk there, etc. I think the only way to make sure of that is perhaps to get the developer to promote a residents' parking scheme for the adjoining streets, and that would ensure that no one apart from residents could park there. It's done in parts of other towns in the area, and that would certainly protect the rights of the objectors, because their main objection is to traffic coming at peak periods, parking in the very narrow streets. And we know what folk are like. Some folk, I mean, they drive right into a performance, just the same as they drive their wains right into a schoolroom if they could. And I think the only way to deter people is to promote residents' parking schemes in the streets that are most affected. And I think you've got to ensure that some of the parking nearest to the building is designated for disabled parking, and disabled people know there is parking there.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. I think what we have here is a very forward-thinking community who are needing their support, and a degree of flexibility in this whole issue here, and there has to be a degree of trust. As the people organising and using this have loads of experience in looking after the business of two different groups, or main groups that are going to be in that building, and given the size of the place, we're hardly going to have busloads and busloads and busloads going there. That's just not going to be practical. I would doubt very much we would get any great numbers actually able to get physically into the building, never mind all the associated transport and everything. So I'm of a mind to support to support this, that they should actually be allowed to go ahead and do it.
Okay. Any further? Councillor McKee.
Thank you, Chair. I entirely agree with Councillor McCoskey. If you go to schools, outside schools in the morning, you see parents, if they could drive into the classroom, they'd drive the wains in there. I think restrictions on parking would be the way ahead. The parking at the actual site would be for disabled only. To be honest with you, I can't see the need for full days every day, 7 days a week. I would have thought a full day Saturday and Sunday, and maybe half days the rest of the week would have been sufficient. But they're wanting the full day, so be it. And the other ones, I suppose it's 10:30 at night. Does it need to be as late as that? Because you've got to consider the residents in that area and the noise that will be coming. There's a lot of people there. There'll be a bit of noise when they're coming to the premises late at night. Albeit there's no drink there, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. That's the only thing I think of parking. If the parking's addressed properly and restricted to residents and disabled only, that would be maybe the best way ahead.
In terms of the parking issues, just to keep members quite clear on what the powers of the Planning Applications Committee are, there wouldn't be power from this committee to actually put in place a residence parking scheme. And that's clearly out with the power of the applicant, because you effectively you've got to determine the application that's been put in by the applicant, and you couldn't ask the applicant to do it. If you were so minded, you could obviously put a motion to go to the other relevant committee to consider that. What you can do is control it within the application site, which is, if Lindsay can put up the red line that they've got around the actual boundary. Now, if I'm right, that doesn't even include the parking area in front of it. So very technically, you couldn't even have a condition requiring disabled parking, never mind a condition saying there should be no buses, because it's out with the application site, and on a public road you couldn't control somebody actually coming down actual place and parking a bus on a public road. So there's a tension there. I hear what members are wanting to do, but unfortunately in planning terms you wouldn't be able to attach conditions as a planning applications committee to that effect.
Yen, Councillor Yen.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask I'm minded to support this application. However, I was wondering to accommodate the objectors regarding the noises issue. with the applicant source funding, got enough funding to secure what's it called, the proof surround sound. So this will reduce noises for the residents.
Councillor Maitland, and then Councillor Gilroy, and then Councillor McKee.
It's really a question about the competitions issue, whether or not we can enforce restriction. The suggestion was that it would be for a year, Chairman, and I was just wondering whether that's possible to deal with through the planning system. I'd also say that, I mean, instinctively, I want to permit this to go through as well. We've got to make certain that the objectors' lives are not made a misery. I mean, that's not our job to do. But I will say that, you know, had the Burn Cinema asked for permission now, we wouldn't give it. How many designated parking spots has the Burn Cinema got? I think it's about 8. And each time there's a performance, we have an issue of parking around about there, and people park up in the residential areas. I know because I've done it myself. And that's what happens. That's the truth of it. But I wonder whether there is any possibility of applying some sort of Section 75 on the times. I have no difficulty with allowing the times to be opened, but only for this particular activity, if you see what I mean, or person doing the activity, because you can imagine this could then be sold on. Supposing it goes belly up in 2 or 3 years, this could then be sold on, and you could have a casino down there, couldn't you? So I think we've got to be clear about what we can do. But I want, on the whole, to be able to support this.
Yes, Chair, the Councillor Maitland's absolutely correct. I mean, basically, if you're removing any restrictions, what you have as an application before you, specifically looking at these 2 conditions, and it's either you refuse this application and therefore the previous conditions stand, or you approve it subject to the conditions which they're seeking. So it's effectively to delete the condition 1 and vary condition 3. That's really the only thing that you can look at today. If you're deleting condition 1, then the use as a multi-purpose arts and leisure facility, wholeheartedly accept what the information we're being given by the applicant, and that's their intended use. No problem with that. But the difficulty is that would then become the authorised use, and it could be sold on, and you therefore lose any control of it, and the issue about the competitions or public performances is instantly gone. Section 75 could be used. It's quite a heavy-handed thing to use. My legal advisor is shaking her head, so I think that's maybe a no then. Do you want to answer any of that, Paul?
I'm not actually convinced that this would be an appropriate matter for a title restriction. I think use and the limits on use is really a better dealt with by planning petition. I think Section 75 would be overburdensome, and you would get an application for modification of that fairly quickly.
Councillor Gilroy.
Well, I think I'm in agreement with everybody here that actually we kind of want this project to go ahead, but we've got the position where we've been recommended with approvals with, and we've got to try and find a way around it. Now, I just kind of wonder we're kind of putting restrictions in there without really maybe thinking about them, you know, because you make a restriction and then you find in 5 months' time there's another problem created because you put restriction in there and you haven't actually asked any of the local people if they want a parking restriction. Don't. I'm just thinking of the riding of the marches. Heavens above, everybody parks everywhere that day, and you would hope they would continue to do so because you want all the people there. So there's other problems, and I hate deferring things. But I would like to get this right, and I wonder if we can task the planning office to go away, if we're all in agreement to remove the restrictions, but that somehow we get a workable ones back in there, which is the times. I don't think it should be just from 8 till 10 in the morning till 10 at night. I think maybe there might need to be a few restrictions. I think we're in danger here of going to put conditions in that we may live to regret, or the applicants may live to regret, and I don't know how we get around it. But I certainly would want to support it.
At this rate, I think you might find David and I both will say something, so let's see if we say something different. One of the things which I'm really concerned about is that we are actually very restricted in what we can do, because permission has been granted, and it's been granted in one circumstance with these conditions attached. And the conditions were attached in good faith because that's what the application form and the advice we were given at that time said the proposal was for. So we took that on board and then made the decision. Now, if we try and just remove what the application here is doing, is actually just asking very specifically for a deletion and an amendment. So that's all you can really think about, is if you remove it, what is the implications for the original permission? And if you amend it, what is the original implication for the original permission? So adding conditions which actually is to do with the original permission is what you're sort of looking towards doing. And I think that's moving into an area. And is that what you were going to say?
What Mrs. Kay said. Yes, I was going to say exactly the same. Basically, you have a very narrow remit to look at here. There's two conditions are being looked at. One a deletion, one a variation. It's kind of all or nothing. That's what they're seeking, and that's why it's before yourselves, because, as Janice said, it was one which had, it taxed us for the first one. We actually gave over the hours that they had originally applied for, and now we're faced with the application to get that amended again.
Councillor McKee, McCaughey, Geddes and Dryburgh.
Aye, thanks, Chair. I think actually my question's been kind of overtaken by the changes we're looking for. Certainly, I think 10:30 on a Monday, well, probably Friday night might be all right, but Monday to Thursday is too late, given the residential area that you're in. And what I was originally going to suggest or ask was, could this parking restriction, could that be taken to another council committee to see if they would implement it in that area? Would that be a way of addressing the parking situation? But certainly, as I say, I've got issues with the length or number of hours they want.
I'm not altogether sure of the correct mechanism for doing this, but I would guess that if you want to put parking restrictions in place, it would have to go through various committees, possibly Planning, Housing, Environment Services, or even DG first, I'm not quite sure. But there's a whole regulatory procedure for putting that in place, consultation with members of the public. It would really have to be driven, by the fact that there was an issue in the area already, which that committee wished to address, rather than this is if zero limits tail wagging the dog. This is something which you're wanting to put in with this. This is a very straightforward planning application. If you have those concerns, there's other ways of raising them, but I would be hesitant about trying to tie the two things together, I'm afraid.
Councillor McCaughey.
It really follows on from that and the point made by Councillor Maitland. I mean, I know what happens at the Robert Burns Centre. Once we car park next door gets full, folk then drift back and you go up the hill and park in adjoining areas. And there's actually a car park with 20 yards away that accommodates 30 cars. You can find that lying empty and all the local streets clogged up. And that is my real fear for this particular development. The same thing would happen, that folk will park as near as possible if there's no restrictions there. And that's just going to annoy everybody in the neighbourhood. Now, I appreciate we can't put that parking restriction on, but I'm also mindful of the fact that at the moment, the current restrictions are 25 hours use over 5 days. The proposal is now 82 hours use over 7 days. And that's a dramatic increase in the time. It's almost three times as long as it's currently being used. That is obviously going to increase traffic. In terms of performances, I think we could put a limit on the number of performances per year. If you just grant this carte blanche, you could have performances on every night of the week. No, that they would, of course. But I think you could put a limit on the number of performances per annum. Say no more than a dozen. I think I'd like to look at the hours, but I mean, if roads officers are saying quite clearly these roads here can't accommodate a development of that kind. So I try to be helpful. I don't think we can reach a conclusion, a satisfactory conclusion today, because if If we want to look at the hours and we want to look at parking restrictions and see what another committee thinks of that, which I'd rather do, because if you then grant the variations looked for here, you've got no comeback. That's it cast in stone for now to eternity. And I want to see some safeguards for folk who reside there.
Councillor Geddes. Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks, Chair. And I think, listening to what the officer said before, I'm sure previously that we have, if we have accepted recommendations, that we could put a condition in place that recommendation falls if the applicant's site or building changes hands. So therefore that could be put in place as a condition. With regards to the hours, I think there's maybe something we can do with regards to the hours, and perhaps say 10 till 9 on Monday to Saturday and 10 till 5:30 on Sunday. But certainly I would like to see this go forward. Plus, we would also take forward some form of motion to other committees to make sure that parking for residents is secured.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Chair, I'm worried. We're making policy on the hoof. We're jumping in and out of planning. We're into this and that. When I read this, I thought it was pretty straightforward, to be honest. Members are in danger of straying off what we're here to do. Now, I understand we all want to support this, but we've got to do it within the framework we've given here today, and we're not. Now, I was taking comfort from both planners that they're saying, you know, be careful, it's very narrow. Trying to get parking, or residence parking, or parking restrictions, David will tell you, we've tried it in Annandale and Nestdale, it's very difficult because you've got to get the police to buy into it, the local. I've tried it thrice over the last 12 years and it doesn't work. We tried it in Langham when we were wanting to put residence parking when we had a kebab shop or something, just quite recently, and that was, couldn't get it. So to me, and that's not our remit either, we're also negotiating somebody's business plan here. And I think that's my job, is to, you know, if people have got a proposal, fine. They put a proposal here and it's either yes or no. We either do it or we don't. Adding all these bits wrong the side isn't really what we're here to do today, and I'm just worried we're making a wrong decision or going in the wrong direction. So I feel a bit uncomfortable where we're going with this, because I haven't got the information in front of me. I don't want to write somebody's business plan. I know from experience that parking restrictions or residence parking is infinitely difficult to get hold of. So I understand all the sympathies and all that, but if it means reject this one and it comes in with a brand new application, that would probably be the safest way to go. I know that may be more burdensome on the applicant, but it's cleaner.
Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things on this. I think just for clarity, I don't think for a minute that the applicants are meaning this facility will be open from 10 in the morning to 10:30 at night without closing every day of the week. I think that's the flexibility I talked about earlier. I mean, we're not talking about the O2 arena here. We're talking about a little hall in Langham. And bearing in mind, as I said earlier, it's a very progressive community who invested heavily in things like the arts. And if this is an overflow facility for that, if we were to go down the route of no allowing this to happen, if that would have been applied in Edinburgh, for example, there would be no fringe festival, right? Because it's part of the richness is it's in little halls all over the place, and we half a dozen or a dozen people going into them. So we're not talking thousands of people, we're not talking hundreds of thousands, right? We're talking half a dozen people getting into a hall. Actually, half of them being kids, local kids who are maybe doing tests for kickboxing. Other side is practice area for things in the bigger facility in the town centre. And I think we should just get on to it and move on.
Councillor Maitland.
Well, I was going to say pretty much actually what Councillor Ogilvie has said. I think he's absolutely correct. That although we all want to achieve this, I think probably it's going to require another application. I think we probably should reject as it stands and permit another application to come forward, giving... This debate has heard. People have heard what we're trying to do, but we can't do it in the way that we've got in front of us. If Councillor Ogilvie was putting forward a motion, I think in order to get the thing going, I would second it.
Yeah, I'd take advice of planners, but from my experience, this would be the quickest, cleanest way to do it, and we can sympathetically look at a brand new application. Or can I say that, or have I prejudged it? But we had what. So yeah, to answer the question, I would happily move that we determine this day with what's in front of us, and so be it. If a new application comes in, we'll look at it again.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Listen quite carefully to what's been said up to now, and while I appreciate there's a good deal of sympathy for the use of this hall, we also have a responsibility to the residents that live around there. I think, again, I think my view would be to refuse this application.
Councillor Gilroy.
Well, I can absolutely understand Councillor Green coming from, but you said that we've got to deal with all we can do is deal with what's here, which will come back in the same form, presumably in a future application, because it's the restrictions we want removed. I mean, what are you expecting the applicants to do? Come back with much more detailed times and how they're going to. I mean, we can't do the parking thing, and I wouldn't go down the road of restricting parking. Way forward for somewhere like Langham. But I just wonder how much more can be done so that we can make a decision by the applicant.
Okay, under the current application, they have applied to delete condition 1, which would allow them to hold as many competitions and public performances as they liked in the building. They've also applied to vary condition 3 to extend the hours from 10 AM to 10:30 PM Monday to Saturday and 10 AM to 5:30 on a Sunday. Should you be minded to refuse the application, they could come back with an alternative proposal, which may include, instead of a deletion of condition 1, a variation of condition 1 in relation to the competitions and public performances, which, as I've suggested, they could limit it to 3 or 4 per year. Another way of helping to manage the traffic problem would be for them to come in with a formal traffic management plan that we could enforce as a planning authority. Under the current application, while they've made some suggestions as to how they might manage traffic, they're not enforceable, so we couldn't attach any of those conditions. We either have to accept what they've applied for today, or if you're minded to refuse it, then they can come back with an alternative proposal or a scheme which would satisfy the planning authority that traffic and residential amenity would not be adversely.
Okay, I think we have a motion and an amendment on the table. We might need some elaboration on the motion, Councillor Dryburgh. Okay, Claire?
The motion by Councillor Dryburgh, seconded by Councillor Geddes, is to approve the application for deletion of condition 1 and variation of condition 3. Amendment by Councillor Ogilvie, seconded by Councillor Maitland, to refuse the application as it stands on the grounds set out in the report. Before I proceed, though, Councillor Blake, you came in and hadn't heard all the discussion, so my advice would be not to vote on this or to abstain. I remember it was quite clear on the motion and amendment before I proceed. Chairman, oh sorry, before I start, can you please put your microphones on to vote so it is recorded? Chairman, motion or amendment?
Motion.
Councillor Dryburgh, sorry, Councillor Blake, are you going to abstain on this one? Councillor Dryburgh, motion or amendment?
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson?
Motion.
Councillor Geddes?
Motion.
Councillor Gilroy?
Amendment.
Councillor Yen?
Motion.
Councillor McCottrey?
Amendment.
Councillor McComb?
Motion.
Councillor McKee?
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland?
Amendment.
Councillor Ogilvie?
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson?
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield?
Amendment.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 votes for the motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 votes for the amendment and 1 abstention. The amendment is carried. The application is refused on the grounds set out in the report as it stands at this point in time.
Just clarify your point that the applicant can come in within a year on a free go.
Not officially, because they'll be coming in with an application which is going to be of a slightly different description, but I will exercise my discretion.
Okay, we'll move on to item 11. Councillor Mail, if you're in hearing distance, come in, please. Councillor McComb's declared an interest, is that correct?
Is it the male toilets?
If you feel the need. Could I remind members that this is being recorded? It may be on Facebook very shortly or something like that. YouTube, I'm reminded. Item 11, change of use and alterations to former public toilets to form dwelling house at the former public toilets, High Street, Langham. Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. If you'd like to look at the location plan in the papers, then I'll take you through the photographs. This first slide is taken from the High Street looking in a northerly direction. The former public toilets building, which sits gable end towards the road, can be seen just beyond the red car to the left of the photograph. Moving along the High Street, this photograph is a close-up view of the former public toilets building. Waverley Road, which has no vehicular access from the High Street, runs to the left of the building. Access to the public toilets was by way of the entrance on the front of the building and another to the north side. And there are high-level windows in both side elevations. The building has no curtilage and there's no designated parking. Moving across the road, and this photograph is taken from the Drove Road junction. It looks across the road towards the application site and shows the pedestrian access to the north side between the toilet building and 112 High Street. This is a close-up view of the existing proposed pedestrian access to the building and shows the relationship between it and 112 High Street, the adjacent dwelling house. The windows in this elevation are high level with a minimum height of 1.85 metres above floor level. This final photograph is taken from Waverley Road looking northwards towards the application site, and this photograph shows the general relationship between existing residential development and the immediate locality. This slide shows the existing floor plan and elevations for the building. And this is the proposed floor plans and elevations for the building. As you can see, it's proposed to form living accommodation in the attic space, and alterations to the building are limited.
Thank you. Any questions for Lindsay on her presentation? No? Okay. Sorry, Councillor Maitland.
Just to be absolutely clear, the previous, are we getting the arch reinstated, that arch, from what the plan's saying about the bandings?
The opening won't be reinstated, but I understand from the drawings that a banding will be.
No more questions? We're in session. Councillor Mail.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This has been closed as a toilet for about 10 years now, and it was closed because of vandalism every time it was opened and refurbished. And it's becoming a derelict site, and it's not a good outlook onto Langham High Street, so I have no compunction, Chair, in actually moving the recommendation that we accept this.
Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bog standard housing application for the convenience of the applicant, and in lieu of any other sites in the town centre, I would second Councillor Mail.
Oh, can it get better than that? Anyone otherwise minded? Okay, thank you very much. We move on to item 12 on the agenda. Alterations and extension to form domestic swimming pool to rear of dwelling house at Old School House, High Road, High Tay. Councillor McComb, if you're in sight, come back, please. start again. Alterations and extension to form domestic swimming pool to rear of dwelling house at Old Schoolhouse, High Road, High Tay. Mrs. Keir, presume it's you.
I was expecting my colleague. We've set up a new mechanism whereby we send an email asking them to come. And unfortunately, he hasn't got his email, so I will run with the photographs. Sorry? Hijinks, yes. This is the application, well, the site layout plan and elevations. And as you can see, it is to put on a fairly substantial extension adjacent to the one house, and also for the domestic swimming pool to the rear of the dwelling house. This is the existing site, and as you can see, the tape has been laid out to show the relationship of the new extension to the existing. So if we go back one, you can see that it's set at an angle, and if you can see there that there's the gable and the existing, on the right-hand side, the existing greenhouse, no, conservatory, and when you go to the next picture, you can see how it relates. So it's sitting at an angle, coming off in that location. In fact, I've got my colleague here. Apologies for this inconvenience. It's okay. No, apologies for that. We'll work out the system so that the emails come, the case officers come at a quicker rate. But moving on, this is turning around from the other angle, and you can see the extension where we've got the house to the rear behind us, and we're looking towards where the extension will be placed. Panning a little bit to the left, looking southwest. And at this point, I'm going to pass over to David so that he can run through the notes that he has prepared. Thank you.
The proposal relates to a fairly large single-storey extension to the rear elevation. It's a traditional two-storey dwelling with a large garden area. In terms of the siting and design of the proposed extension, we're happy that it complies with policy. The key issue in this case is flooding. Both SEPA and the council flood risk team were consulted on the proposal. SEPA lodged an objection on the basis that there was a lack of information to assess flood risk, while the council flood risk team had no objections to the proposal. The applicant subsequently didn't submit any further information, and overall, despite SEPA's objection, we feel it's unreasonable to refuse the application on that basis. There's various factors that relate to that in terms of the proposal is very close to being permitted development under the new permitted development legislation. A small decrease in the height of the roof and a very minor change in the position of the extension would actually make it permitted development. It wouldn't require consent at all. It's also just out with the flood risk area of SEPA's flood maps. So taking all of these factors into account, we feel that the proposal is acceptable overall, and that it should be notified to Scottish ministers as such.
Could I ask the question, was that SEPA's objection or complaint flooding from the pool or flooding into the pool?
I think SEPA's main concern was the ability to convey flood water, and I think they wanted some sort of flood risk assessment or additional information to be submitted.
Councillor Maitland. Sorry if I stole your thunder. Any other questions for the officer at this point? No. Councillor Driver.
One question, Chair, is how do you do a flood risk assessment in a swimming pool?
Now listen, calm down. You're not good enough for the television yet. we're in session. So no further questions. We're in session. Councillor Geddes and then Councillor Driver.
Move that the application be granted, sir, on the basis recommended.
Anyone? Councillor Maitland?
I very much agree. I do hope they'll take lessons from DG first. DG1 rather. It's a self-build pool here. So I hope they
Don't think we should go down that road at this point.
The application will now be notified to Scottish ministers of the intention to approve unconditionally.
Okay, item 13 is a zero waste park to include the, to include the erection of store/effluent tank building, bio-waste reception building, recyclate store building, secondary treatment facility building, shop and workshop, building incorporating roof-mounted photovoltaic panels, and two site offices, recycling, composting, inert waste, screening and storage areas, associated car parking, landscaping and fencing, formation of a suds ponds and formation of service tunnel, connection to Scott Gen plant and existing pumping station, at land to east of Ecodeco plant, Shanks, and west of Dergavel stores, Lockerbie Road, Dumfries. Mrs. Kay.
Thank you, Chair. And regrettably, I've also lost a colleague again, but they will come again. Very briefly, we'll go through the photographs. I think everybody knows in the room where the Ecodeco plant is and knows this site. So this is just outside Dumfries. We're on the road to Lockerbie, and you can see the site is situated between the Ecodeco, which is outlined in red at this distance on the left-hand side, and the other developments on the right-hand side. So it's the vacant land in between where the proposal is in majority. But there is a small area to the west side of the Ecodeco, which is also part of the application site, and an element connecting the two. This actually shows the details of the proposal, so you can see that on the left-hand side, that's where the existing domestic recycling area is, and it's proposed to remove that part from the development and reinstate it, but leave it the existing access into the Ecodeco. Now, an additional access is going to be formed to the much larger area, which you can see coming off in the middle. You've got an area of landscaping left and right as you come off the Lockerbie Road, and you move into the development. And within that area, along the southwest corner, you can see an areas of ground, which is where the SUD schemes are provisionally proposed and the details are still outstanding. But you can also see in the east bottom right corner connection into the other part of the site, out of the site to the development on the existing development on the east side of the development. This is a picture of the main building. Further details of the access as it comes in and the building above. Further details again. See, it's a substantial building, but bearing in mind the relationship of this to existing industrial buildings either side, particularly the Ecodeco, it's a substantial building. Further details. This is where the existing household waste recycling centre is accessed off the Lockerbie Road. This is the existing household waste recycling centre in the rear of the Ecodeco plant. And this is the smaller part of the application site where the existing facilities will be removed and be incorporated into the new part of the development and the land reinstate. This is coming out of the site into the area which is open ground. And this is where the new access will be formed. So we've got the second larger area. Turning back and looking across the road, you can see the Ecodeco in the distance. And this is the area on the left-hand side where the site will be proposed, where the proposal is cited. From the gate, panning right, looking towards Dergavel stores along the eastern boundary. Then padding right from the previous with the mound of restored Lochamoss landfill site behind the trees. And then you can see the Ecodeco building behind. So this area is the much larger part when we think about the original plan, which was thought at the beginning. southeast corner next to Dargarble Stores, the existing workshop to be demolished on the right along eastern boundary and access tract on the left. Centre of the site on the southeastern boundary looking towards Dargarble Stores, the Scott Gen plant lies to the rear of the trees on the right. Panning left from the previous centre of the site looking along the western boundary. The centre of the application site next to Dargarble Stores workshop building to be demolished, padding right along the southern boundary. Panning right from the previous looking towards Echo Deco and Lockby Road. It's actually showing how much of a greenfield site it is, but actually also demonstrating that there are other buildings in the immediate vicinity in the context of the proposal within that is acceptable. Dargarble Stores access and parking areas, go-kart track, right, Scott left, centre. The central consideration in this application is that the Scottish Government are bringing forward proposals for how our waste is recycled. And this is an integral part of us as a council meeting that requirement. And it's sited in this location purely, centrally because the Eco Deco is decided. In that context, it's able to take account of what the building currently does, but also to meet the requirements the council has to meet in terms of regulations which are coming through. And it's in that context that this site is supported, notwithstanding the fact it's currently a green site. At that point, I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Key? Councillor McKee.
Are we sure the government and the European Union are not going to change the regulations again, because there's got to be enough amount of money spent on this?
Councillor Dryburgh.
At least said on that one, the better, just in case we're in court in the future with the discussions that are ongoing with the Scottish Government on that one. I just want some confidence that, I heard you say, Janice, that the existing Eco Deco plant will be moved. Is that right?
No, the existing recycling facility. If we go back to the photographs, panning back. Keep going, keep going. It'll come there. Sorry, thank you. You know, that's part of it, right? That part there is to go into the new site, but not the actual Eco Deco. That part of the business is staying where it is at the present time.
Councillor Maitland.
Could I ask about the shop that's proposed in the middle of all this? I'd like to know about placing a shop in the middle of this, which is not a retail area. So what's proposed?
Claire has kindly advised me it's paragraph 4.37, because we did discuss this at length, Claire and ourselves. If you turn to page 125. So it clarifies there, the Zero Waste Park also includes a shop, workshop incorporating an internal sales area. A new shop retail would be considered against Structure Plan Policy D21. Given the specific nature of the goods to be sold at the site, which has been recycled, upcycled, in other words, it's to do with what's delivered there, it's not considered that proposed retail use would have a significant adverse impact on the town centre. It would therefore be appropriate, this is a significant part, so we're consider that there is an opportunity here to have a small site to do the site recycling, and in that context that's acceptable, but it's not permissible to allow a general retail use to develop at that point. And in that context, it was therefore be appropriate to attach a condition to ensure that the retail element remains ancillary.
And condition 15, as recommended, covers exactly that.
Yes, absolutely, thank you. I did read that, but what I was interested in is whether or not through planning we have any operational, whether we can manage the operations of this. You know, whether it could go to be managed by, for argument's sake, a social enterprise, or you know, what we can do. So that's what I'm trying to pick away at.
No, when we grant planning permission, it goes to the land. So this permission is part of a larger scheme, and we're ensuring that it's part of that larger scheme by that condition, but we can't actually stipulate who operates it, nor could we stipulate that who operates this whole business over the next number of years.
Councillor Gilroy.
Yes, I've got a couple of questions. One is on another access on that rather busy road. I see that the Council Roads officer raises no objection, but I'm quite concerned about it. But the other thing is, I mean, is that a greenfield site? I mean, I noticed it's there at 1.6 that it's presently used for agricultural purposes. Is it designated in our plans for this type of development?
No, it is. It's actually, if you go, I'll ask Claire to look for the actual paragraph. We discussed this. It's out with the settlement boundary of Dumfries. The site isn't specifically allocated. When you go to the actual policy, there is policy support where a justified location for a particular use is proposed, and I believe there's 4.16 onwards actually goes through that very particular point. 4.16 on page 121. So we've, in that part of it, we've explained where the site is relative to the development plan and its allocation. So it is a greenfield site, but the policy support does allow us, where a particular justification is made, and as I explained, this is the right place for this because of the siting of the Echo Deco. In that context, it's the right place for it to go.
I just, you showed a picture of the road and, going to be another access. I mean, can we not use the same access as Echo Deco, come round the back? I think that's a fast road, that.
No objection has been received from our roads colleagues. The application is before us as submitted, and it's also part of how the site will operate. So if it was to come round the back, people visiting would have to go round the back. And I think that as far as the Echo Deco is concerned, they want to operate it theirs, and this is a separate. So I think in many ways it's to do the operation, and it's the correct location.
Yeah, the other thing to point out as well, this area which you're seeing on the slide at the moment would cease being used for that purpose. And if I remember rightly, it's just shown as being a car park for about 10 spaces for workers at the plant. That's actually a poor position. If you look on page 109, where the new access is proposed is actually far closer to the roundabout. So people have been slowing down and or just speeding up from coming off the roundabout. So in fact, that existing access is going to be very much downgraded in terms of its use, and a better location is being found.
Councillor McComb.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. Could you go back to the slide of Terregles stores? Yeah. That building is to be demolished, is that correct?
Yes. That's the existing workshop within the site that was part of the old go-karting facility. Did operate from.
Could you tell me when that building was constructed? It looks very new.
Go back to if you look on the planning history, that was 2000, well, it'd been after 2001. Yeah, page 130.
So the building's just over 10 years old. Seems to suggest a rather lack of forward planning here.
10 years is a long time. Get to your stage in life, Jim, it's a long time.
Yes, second point, Chair.
Yeah.
I notice the possibility of World War II planes having been broken up here. I hope there is no possibility of a Dalgety Bay scenario.
Chair, if I can assist with that, there is actually a condition number 12 on page 128 to do with site-specific ground investigation report to be undertaken and works undertaken. I would certainly trust it's not going to be anything like that, but it is covered by condition, and we have a contaminated land officer who will be looking at that.
Okay. No more questions. Mrs. Maitland.
I wonder whether there's anything to be done in terms of planning. What are we doing about signage? I'm sorry, I scanned it. I haven't seen signage.
They haven't at this time come forward with any proposals in relation to signage.
Would that come to us, through you, Chairman?
It depends on whether or not what they propose to do, whether or not it was an advance warning sign or whether or not it was a brown sign. It would depend what they're actually proposing to do.
Okay.
Okay, no, I see an opportunity because, I mean, you know, I find it quite extraordinary that people can dump a quarter of a mile from this facility here. People can dump stuff. I find it absolutely extraordinary. They do. And one just thinks there might be an opportunity to remind people, you know, near the site or on the site or somehow to build into the site indications that that's what this does. And that's about good design. If we design that in as opposed to plonking a sign on, you know, there's a way of getting additional.
Councillor, are these still in questions?
No, I was going to move the recommendation, Chairman. I think we're going round in circles.
Just calm yourself. Councillor Ferguson.
It's just about the road thing again. In the first, I appreciate what David was saying. That one side of the development is close to the roundabout. The old exit, the entrance, to the current public site is in a dip, right, which means they're going to be coming out the dip and up onto the flat and right onto the junction. It's actually going to be worse than the current one is just now. So what can we put into place to make sure that that's actually done? Yeah. When you actually sit at the entrance there, you're actually in a dip, not level. You can't see that from here. You can't see the dips, and it's not a 3D picture.
If I can respond to that, if you look at the plan for the roads, there we are. That's into the new zero waste part of it. They're proposing a new turning lane and ghost island. So that's the new element. So obviously, if there's somebody coming from Dumfries, as it were, and somebody wants to turn right, then obviously that's a ghost island facility that they're proposing there. And if you look at the response from the roads on,
Got it. That's fine.
then you know they're saying that they're happy with that.
Yeah, I've got that's fine. Yeah, perfect.
McKee.
I think what Councillor Ferguson was on is some of these places, the fields lower the road, they'll need to build the road up to the level of the existing road for a certain distance within the site.
Yes, clearly that obviously they'll have to culvert some of it, I believe, in order to be able to go over the top and then access the site from there.
Councillor Ogilvie.
The roads isn't part of the application site. We trust that when they're doing this, that the roads department, in consultation, will do something. I mean, we've got no faith in anybody. I mean, I was going to ask, is it litted? Is it lit?
Okay. If there are no more questions, we'll go into session. Anybody otherwise minded? Councillor.
Could we object on political grounds? No.
You can if you like, but it'll not carry much weight here. It's a planning committee. Okay, Claire?
Chairman, the application is approved subject to conditions.
I have to leave you, ladies and gentlemen, so I'll hand you over to my Vice Chair, Mr. Mail. Okay, you can do what you like, Dennis.
Okay, members, can we move on to item 14? An application for a realigning and widening of existing road U205A at Windermere Road, Stapleton Road, Annan.
Okay, if you'd like to look at the location plan in the committee papers, and I'll take you through the photograph. This first photograph has been taken from the B6357, which is the Annan to Kirkpatrick Fleming Road. It's been taken approximately 50 metres south of the junction with Windermere Road, which is just before Windermere House in the centre of the photograph. The proposals include the realignment and upgrading of this junction, which would involve it being moved approximately 10 to 12 metres closer to the position of the camera. The temporary suds feature would also be located on land close to this new junction. Moving to the Windermere Road junction, this photograph is taken looking in a northwesterly direction along the line of the existing road. After the initial section at the junction, the road narrows to a single carriageway. Continuing north along Windermere Road to a point just beyond Windermere House, the rural nature of the road and surrounding land can be seen. This is where the line of the new road curves into the land to the north, and the tree in the centre of the photograph is proposed to be removed, as are the hedgerows along the line of the existing road. This photo looks north across the agricultural land proposed for the line of the new section of road. Again, continuing further along Windermere Road, this photo shows the point where the line of the new road will cut back across the existing road and curve into the land to the south. The second tree proposed for removal can be seen on the right, and the existing passing place can be seen to the left. Again, from the passing place, this photograph is taken looking west across the land proposed for the line of the new section of road, and this land is allocated for housing in the Annandale-Nestdale local plan. This final photograph is taken turning to look in a southeasterly direction back down the line of the existing road. It's taken from a point where the new section of road curves in from the right of the photograph and will tie in with the already widened section which extends to the north. This slide shows the line of the new section of road in relation to the surrounding land, and the proposed horizontal deflection can be clearly seen. Again, this slide shows the line of the new section of road, proposed junction improvements, and the suds area down towards the right-hand side. And this final slide is an extract from the Annan inset map from the Annandale-Nestdale local plan. The land to the south of Windermere Road, as you can see, the grey hatched areas, are allocated for residential development, and the areas to the north have had planning permission or are subject to a current application. As the existing road is not of a suitable standard to accommodate in safety, the significant increase in traffic which will be generated as a result of the development of this land, which has been indicated as potentially 230 units, the upgrading of the road is essential to facilitate development.
Okay, members, any questions for the officer? Councillor Ogilvie?
Clearly that's quite dated. If you go up, see whatever it is, the Patrick Fleming Road, you'll see that the industrial site is already started. It's quite a heavy change already there. As a local member, this is a jigsaw. We need this final part to release everything, and so I welcome the fact we've got to this point. I think the lapse thing is misleading, because if they're building on there, then they don't have permission for it, but I won't mention that. This is that road. The picture you've taken of it, it's deteriorated. I mean, I don't know how old that, it must be a year old or something, that picture, because if you go now, it's like a minefield. So everybody's wishing for this to happen, so I welcome this.
We're in questions.
The question was, some of that stuff's dated, Chair, and Lindsay's nodding in embarrassment.
Councillor Maitland?
Why is it that the road appears to take out the only tree that's visible on the entire site? I mean, okay, it's not my area, you might not care, but I would have thought you might worry about the odd tree. Bearing in mind it is odd.
Are there any other questions?
Well, that's a serious question. I'd like to know why.
Okay, can we answer? Councillor Maitland, why was the tree taken out?
The unfortunate removal of the two trees is as a result of the line of the new road, which has been designed to best meet Designing Street's current road design policy, as say it is unfortunate, but the removal of those trees would be required as part of any road upgrading works, regardless of whether it was this scheme or another.
Can I ask then, will there be hedgerow trees, trees in hedges put back in as a result of another application?
The current application involves the erection of a stock fence down the line of the existing road to ensure that the land remains rural in character until such times as an application comes forward for residential development. Landscaping proposals would come forward as a part of those future development proposals.
Can you explain why there's a bare area between LA, in the corner between LA and LA 35, LA 4 and LA 35, please? Why is it not all marked off for development?
Because at the time the plan was produced, it wasn't built, but it is now. It exists now, yeah. I remember dealing with the application for it, so I know it's there.
Any further questions? No, then can we move to the recommendation? It is to approve. Can we approve it? Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 15, which is change of use of agricultural land to form tennis court, erection of associated 3-metre fence and installation of one ground-mounted solar array, extension to development previously approved under planning reference 11/P/4/0373 at land adjacent to Johnston Bridge Primary School, Johnston Bridge.
Planning permission was granted previously for a community hall, a bowling green, multi-use games area and a play area, and that's attached as Appendix 1 to the report. The current application proposes tennis court and associated landscaping, a ground-mounted solar array, and details of fencing is also provided. On the plan there, the tennis court is at the top right of the site plan, so it occupies a fairly small area of the overall development. The key issues with this application: siting and design, and access and parking. The principle of the use as a sports facility was previously established through the granting of previous application last year. In this case, the tennis court is considered to relate well to the rest of the development in terms of its design, fits in with the remainder of the sports pitches. With regard to parking on site, the previous arrangements are consistent with, there's no changes to the previous application. The addition of a single tennis court isn't considered significant in the context of the overall scheme. The site is on the right-hand side. This is the view along the U324A. The site entrance is just to the right of that slide. And that's looking the other direction down the road towards Johnston Bridge, with the entrance by foot on the left. And as existing, the multi-use games area has been installed in the foreground. The tennis court will be situated just in front of that shed that you can see in the distance. And again, just next to the existing games area. That's a view from the school playground looking over towards the site of the tennis court. Concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Driver?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just actually looking at the applicant. I mean, the applicant's Mr F. Dale, whereas the previous application was Johnston Community Council. Is Mr F. Dale the chairperson or the person in charge of the project or whatever it is?
Anybody got any idea?
My understanding was that it's Johnston Bridge Community Council that are the applicant. Don't know.
I think it's the particular way our back office system works. If there's a contact name, it comes up first, but it will be Mr Dale behind that it will say Johnson Bridge Community Council.
Any other questions? No, then we have nobody registered to speak, so can we be in session? And okay, so I have a motion to submit. Anybody otherwise minded? Councillor McKee?
No, I think it's good to see a wee place like that doing so much developing in the last 2 or 3 years. So I think it's all to be encouraged. Well done.
Moving on, item 16 is siting of 4 porta cabin units for use as workshop and training facility and associated kitchen, office, WC facilities and formation of car parking at former council depot, Stapleton Road, Annan.
Okay, slide. Sorry. The first slide shows the plans for the proposal, including the position of the proposed porta cabins adjacent to the entrance to the depot. This photo was taken across the road from the existing access to the depot, quite close to the existing junction to Annan Hospital. This photo shows the northeasterly approach to the site, showing the entrance to the depot and part of the Pennies factory. This photo was taken from the access looking right down Stapleton Road. This shows the entrance, the gated entrance to the depot, including an existing industrial buildings to within the site. This shows the entrance to the depot panning slightly to the left. That concludes the presentation.
Councillor McKee, Councillor Ogilvie.
Is that the council site we were looking at there? I think it's an absolute disgrace the way that's been left. No disrespect to the unless you just took the photos and showed them up. I think that's an absolute disgrace that we leave a place like that in a state like that.
Yeah, but it's not a planning consideration at this moment. Councillor Ogilvie.
No, but we criticise other people, Dennis. I think we need to start looking at ourselves.
I think everybody appreciates what you're saying. Yeah.
I was surprised when I saw this. Hi, Carla. Because 5 years ago, this was deemed unsafe, and we moved everybody out, and we moved everybody to Lockerbie, and this was on the open market. When I saw this application, it doesn't say in here who's going to use it. I know it's not a planning condition, but I'd like to know who's going to use it, because there is safety issues round about this site.
The porta cabins will be used by Dumfries and Galloway Council Community Services.
Well, I would have to agree with Councillor McKee. I think that's an absolute disgrace. But I mean, it was declared surplus how many years ago? And I saw a for sale sign, so it's obviously not sold. But those sheds or whatever you want them, what have we got? How are we going to deal with them? Because it's not left.
The application is actually just about the siting of 4 porta cabin units. We can't comment as within this application about the use of the buildings within which this is being sited. The principle is just about the siting. It would be for another matter to address that particular question.
Do we not? I mean, what happened to the sale? Did we never get an offer for it? Or?
I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that question. It's not something I.
Councillor Driver.
So how do we tidy that site up then? Do the planning committee have any focus on that at all?
Well, in as far as granting permission for an alternative use, then it will be tidied up as part of that, we would hope.
Chair, I mean, the site is still up for sale as far as I'm aware. The issue with health and safety is asbestos. It's actually in the existing building that's actually in there. With regard to use for community service, people, I think they would probably get the community service people who are on community thing to clean it up for them anyway, which would be a good idea. The access to this particular application site, though, will require some form of upgrading because it's actually on quite a narrow road. It's a bus route as well. So is that covered in the response from the roads officer?
Turn to page 160. Consultation response is there. No objections from the Council's roads officer. The proposed draining facility would utilise an existing access which would allow suitable visibility and passing of 2 vehicles out with the public road. Satisfactory parking is also indicated.
Okay, any further questions? There are again no one registered to speak, so we're in session. We do have a recommendation to approve subject to conditions. Councillor McKee.
Just on the same subject, actually, Chair, should we continue with the recommendation the site shall be restored to its condition prior to the development?
Well, can I just ask, I mean, I know it's a planning committee, we can't do anything about the state of the thing, but can we, presumably it's property services dealing with it now, because prepared surplus, it's not the market. Can we do anything as a committee to ask them to areas that are council properties with signs up saying Dumfries and Galloway Council? They're like that. We do. We have a property.
I'll bring David in first. I've now got about 20 people wanting to speak.
It is obviously the Planning Applications Committee, but I dare say you could note the condition of it as part of the minute and express your concern about the condition that it was left in, which we can forward on to the relevant section. The only planning issue I could think of is serving a Section 179 notice, known as a wasteland notice, but given that we'll be serving it from the council on ourselves, it's probably not a very good idea, and I'm not even sure you can comply with it.
Councillor Ferguson first, then Councillor Brown.
Given that community payback is going into it, trust me, I'll be getting raised at social work.
Councillor Driver.
Just to help the situation along, maybe it might be an idea, Chair, to write to the relevant chair of that committee and say, look, we've had this application in front of us, we've seen how bad it actually is. Let's make sure it's tidied up.
Councillor Geddes, please.
Well, can I move so that the application be granted on the basis recommended and that the question be now put?
Anybody otherwise minded?
No, just a quickie, Chair. That entrance was...
It's been put, yeah, and I've taken it. Anybody otherwise minded? No. Then that's accepted. Item 17 is change of use and alterations to office to form one number flatted dwelling house for holiday accommodation at 7 High Street, Money Thornhill. Okay.
Thanks, Chair. The proposal relates to the ground floor building that we can see in front of us, painted cream. The door to the office premises is just adjacent to the road sign, and the premises itself sits behind the 3 windows that you can see either side of. The plans show the change of use internally of the office to residential accommodation and some fairly minor alterations to windows. A condition has been attached to the planning to the recommendation recommending that the windows be upgraded to appropriate standard character of the conservation area. But otherwise, the proposal is recommended for approval.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor McKee.
Thanks, Chair. It's just that on 1.3, the last sentence, a door to a shared pen common area is also to be blocked. Is that whole block being made into one sort of thing?
That's correct, yes. You can see on the plan there that there's, on the left-hand side of the plan, there's a pen that leads to the adjacent ground floor property. And there is, as existing, a door from the area immediately inside the door to the street that steps into the application site itself, and that's proposed to be blocked off. To all intents and purposes, it's an internal alteration. The planning
Any further questions? Councillor Maitland?
Yes, it's interesting about conservation areas and PVC windows, white UPVC windows. In the application we just looked at in Langham, and I can understand why, because it actually is not a frontage. We've accepted the use of UPVC in a conservation area. My understanding was, and I'm speaking particularly of areas in Sturtry, that people are very careful about attempting in a conservation area, I'm talking about a conservation area which is important, where it is important, to attempt to mend things. And I'm quite interested to see that there is an acceptance of white UPVC, although you are stopping the hanging, the opening, the methods of opening. And I'd just like to understand what the difference is.
Okay, thanks, Chair. There are particular types of UPVC, vertical sliding sash and case windows that you can get that are of very slimline profiles that, to all intents and purposes, look virtually identical to a timber sash and case window. And a number of years ago, this authority trialled that type of UPVC window in conservation areas, and it was generally been a success. So the condition is framed such that it allows timber or UPVC vertical sliding sash and case windows of traditional profiles and detailing. My view is that that's the important element, is that it's the traditional profiles and detailing that is important in this particular case, rather than the material that is used.
Any other questions? No. Then again, we have no registered speakers. We are in session. Anyone other-minded in the recommendation to approve? Thank you very much. Item 18, second storey extension to front and side of dwelling house at 40 McMaster Road, Stranraer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm standing in for the case officer, who I'm pleased to report is now on maternity leave and gave birth to a baby girl earlier this month. Presentation, these photos were taken on Friday. I wanted to get recent photos, but obviously the weather conspired against me in terms of the quality of these images, so I apologise in advance. This is a view of the southeastern gable of the existing dwelling house, 40 McMaster Road. You can see that lean-to element and then a more conventional gable and behind it. It's that property. You'll notice in the foreground left-hand side the school grounds, and obviously one of the access points to the school on the left-hand side there, the Bellmouth access. Second image is it's a similar viewpoint, slightly closer. The proposal is to bring the upper gable of that part forward towards the viewing perspective here, and also introduce an upper storey element on the front elevation. This is a view of the front elevation. It faces northeasterly, and that's facing onto McMaster Road. This is a more front-on view of the property. It's an end terrace property, as you can see, and again the proposal would extend the ridgeline to the left-hand side, no further than where the existing footprint is, and the projecting element would come towards the viewer here. So overall there's no extension to the footprint. This is a view, it's looking kind of more in a westerly direction, and it's showing the terrace of four houses as they appear at the moment, and obviously the subject properties on the left-hand side subject to that single-storey extension. Turning to the plans, that shows the site plan area of the extension in red, and that obviously corresponds to the existing extension. And finally, the plans, they're not easy to define at this level, but it gives you an idea of the existing and proposed elevation. So, for example, in the southeast, you've got that projecting element to the revised gable with the windows there. To the northeast, the principal elevation, you can see how that projecting element relates to the existing image as directly above. And then finally, at the bottom right-hand side, you can see that's looking along McMaster Road in the opposite direction, showing how that projecting element would look. And the recommendation is to approve the application. It's obviously at committee today because the applicants and elected member of the council.
Questions? Councillor Geddes, you were first.
Yes, as paragraph 4.5, it says it is recommended that the proposal be approved subject to directives. What are the directives, Chairman, and why are the directives in no conditions?
I guess the directives are the standard time ones, which basically has 3 years. We don't use those as conditions any longer.
Just to confirm, I've just had a quick check at the actual application file. There were no consultees to that, so yes, those would be the conditions. Sorry, directive.
Any other questions? No. Again, we have no speakers. We're in session. I have a recommendation. Is anybody otherwise minded? Okay, then that's it. Thank you all very much.